This is a big simcha for our kehillah, for all of Efrat, with our partners in so many different ways. Chabad of Efrat English Division under the leadership of Rav Shlomi and Kiki Newman. It's such a schus to even know you guys and have anything to do with each other, and it's also a great schus to mention that Rav Shlomi will be starting a time Yeshir tremendous coming Thursday mornings after davening. Highly, highly recommended. Encouraging everyone to come. I'd also like to thank today's sponsors. I want to thank Johnny and Ayala Finn, לזכותו ולרפואה שלמה של החייל דוד נתנאל בן איילה אהובה. בתוך כל שאר החיילים הצדיקים. We'd like to thank Edward and Marilyn Croman, Barry and Peter Farkas for the continued strength, courage, and safety of our chayalim and chayalot and of all those who in their service are shluchim for Hashem, enabling our continued blessed life in Eretz Yisrael for the good health and long life of Yisrael ben Chaya and Miriam Leah Bas Hanya. Also, we'd like to thank Eliel, Sarah ben David, בהודיה גדולה לקדוש ברוך הוא על כל חסדיו, בתפילה להצלחת עם ישראל וכוחות הביטחון, לרפואת הפצועים ולהשבת החטופים לביתם במהרה. And of course, we always love and want to thank Mr. and Mrs. Anonymous Donor. Thank you so much. Always. Big tzara, this is, like I said before, this is a big simcha. I also want to mention that there will be a Q&A, but to make it easier, for those that would like, to please text your question to the following number, if you'd like it to be addressed. You ready? This is so 2024, it's unbelievable. 054-730-8983. 054-730-8983. You got it?
But if somebody wants to ask directly,
and even if you want to ask directly afterwards, Gam Ken Bishop Arab, that's okay. One more time, okay. 054-730. I feel like I'm announcing the winning number of it's not Rabbi Jacobson's number. 054-730-8983. Okay, Chevra, let's focus. Anyone that's went to Binyanei Ha'omah, it's been there the last few days. We spoke about it over Shabbos. You walk and you see what's going on there, especially if you go to the Sfarim, to the Sfarim sale there. It's hot for the fella. It's really overwhelming what's going on with the reach, with the spread, the amount of Torah that is accessible to us. It's literally a mabul of Sfarim, a flood of Sfarim. But I just want to mention that there's a mabul of words that are not written necessarily in Sfarim, although they are a little bit. And that those words are not seen anywhere else besides Kasmei Maluach Libecha. They're on the words of our hearts. And I think I speak on behalf of all of us how much we're in such a desperate need of a mabul of nechama, of a mabul of hope, of tikva, of consolation. And Baruch Hashem, Rabbi Jacobson's tikva and nechama and ahava that has been spread more and more, because this is what our door needs, has reached the hearts, aluach libeinu, for so long, but especially extra dosage of it this last kufa. And for that I want to say in the name of everyone, thank you. And also give a bracha. Give a bracha for Yischachus HaKochos, more and more and more. And on a personal note, when we speak about nechama, so sometimes when someone goes through a hard thing, so you make sure you pay shiva call and you say, you express your condolences and then you move weiter. I think that it was about for 2 months, at least 2 or 3 months following my aunt's tragic death this last summer. every conversation I had with Rabbi Jacobson was him asking how I'm doing, how my mother's doing, how my family's doing. And it means so much to me and my family, and I thank you so much for that. Me'omek halev. B'chavod, Rabbi Jacobson.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Katz, for your very moving words. Welcome everybody. Since this is Yud Tet Kislev Farbrengen, so maybe we could begin with a niggin. Especially we're in your place. Maybe one of the Nigunim of the Alter Rebbe, no? Chanukah. It's hard to be the follow-up after that, nigga. I don't know how you top the Alter Rebbe's Avinu Malkeinu exactly. I won't try. I'll just try to continue the frequency. Continue the frequency in words. They say that Reb Nachman of Breslov once said, what's the difference between giving a speech and singing a song? So he said, if I'm giving a speech and somebody starts talking in the middle of my words, we call it in English an interruption. In Hebrew, they call it normal. I mean, hafra'ah. Hafra'ah. But if I'm singing a song and you start singing, we call it harmony. So Reb Nachman said the objective of life is to stop speaking and start singing. Because those who speak, everybody's always interrupting them, especially their spouse. Those who sing, everybody's always harmonizing with them. Which is, by the way, when you come home in the evening, don't talk, just sing. That's the way to do it. It will dissolve most of the issues within 20 minutes, but you just have to keep singing. Lame as Rob, just keep it a musical, the whole night. Why are you so late? I am so sorry. Lo hayapkak aval, whatever. But I would just add that sometimes it seems like that sometimes even a person who's singing may still be speaking, and sometimes even when we're speaking we may be singing. So really the objective of words, as the Alter Rebbe writes many times in Torah, look at the Torah, Moshe Rabbeinu said, Lo ish dvarim anoichi. I'm not a man of dvarim. For introducing himself as not being a man of words, he spoke quite a lot. In fact, one day he'll compose an entire sefer called Sefer Dvarim. So he says, I'm not a man of words. Now, lahavdil, when people get up at a Shabbat brachas and they're like, I don't know why they asked me to speak. And you'll forgive me, I think to myself, I agree. But then he'll say, after all of the speeches that were given, like 24, I don't have anything to add. And I'm like, I agree. You could just say Mazel Tov and sit down. 45 minutes later, he's still not finished his notes. Apparently he has a lot to add. So what are you saying? I'm not a man of words, and then you go on with words, Sefer Dvarim, all the words, Eila Dvarim. But the truth is, the Alter Rebbe says why Moshe couldn't speak, he wasn't a man of words, was not because he didn't have what to say, but because in the frequency of infinity, words always spoil, they dilute. They not only dilute, they contain energy which by definition can't be contained. Words are the greatest blessings. Take it from a man who speaks. Words are the greatest blessing, they're also the greatest curse. They're the greatest blessings, that's how we communicate. Medaber. Adam lenefesh chaya leruach mamala, the Targum says. The definition of a living soul is a medaber, a communicative soul. And when you're married, you got to know that the definition of a living soul is a communicating soul. Don't guess what I'm feeling, because I don't know. I can't guess what you're feeling. Tell me what you're feeling. That was for the women. The men are not feeling, they're hungry. They're tired. You'll have to get used to my humor over there in the back. Don't take me so seriously. But on the other hand, words, by definition, are kalim, they're containers. They're oisius hamagbilim. They limit. The Maggid teaches, as Yud Tet Kislev, the Holy Maggid, Bereishis bara Elokim esa shamayim ve'esa aretz. In the beginning, God created heaven and earth. So he says what he created was not heaven and earth. Everything was there before. It's esa shamayim ve'esa aretz. It's the oisius of heaven, the letters of heaven and the letters of earth, meaning the definitions of heaven and earth. Pre-creation, everything existed, but it wasn't a definition. It was just infinity. The ability to define it in a new way, through DNA, through letters, through a program code, through words, that was created. Esa Shamayim, the letters of heaven. Esa Aretz, the letters of earth. So all of reality can be experienced as pre-creation. And over there it's all Ein Sof, Einad Mulvada. What happens in this world is God wanted there should be letters and words which contain things and define things, and then link the two. So it's really about, Moshe says, Lo yesh dvarim anaychi. I'm not a man of words. What I have to communicate can't be communicated through words. How do you communicate the experience of infinity? How? I don't know. I don't know. How do you communicate the experience? He said, don't do this to me. And then Hashem says, the same one who is the author of infinity is also the author of words, the author of finiteness. The moment you can get into that deeper frequency, which is even beyond infinity, called Atzmos, over there you could combine infinity with words. So Moshe then could say, Eila Hadvarim. So all the words of Torah are really words that point us to a place that's beyond words. If it's not pointing you to a place that's beyond words, then ultimately the words are not worth much. I've been speaking for many, many years. This is my conclusion. If the words don't point you to a place that is beyond words, they probably should not be said. Silence is much better. The Alter Rebbe had a son, his name was Reb Chaim Avram. He had 3 boys. The Mittler Rebbe, Rabbeinu Dov Ber, was his successor. He had a youngest son, Reb Moshe, who ended up as a prisoner by Napoleon's army. He was tortured. And they had a middle son, Reb Chaim Avram. Chaim Avram lived a long life, and he looked just like his father. And they used to ask him in his later years if he could share Torah, and he never wanted to. So Tzaddik was alive already, and he never wanted to. They said, just say something you heard from your father. He wouldn't speak. And one week they begged him, and for Shalashudis, he said he'll say something by Shalashudis. So the whole town of Lubavitch in Belarus came. The Alter Rebbe's son is finally going to say something he heard from his father. Wow, everybody came. They're sitting at the 3rd meal, Sudash Lashit, and they're waiting. He doesn't say anything. They look at him, and he said one pasuk from Tehillim, Kuf Yud Tet. Belibi tzafanti imrasecha laman loy echtalach. In my heart I have concealed your word so that I don't sin to you. And that was it. Belibi tzafanti imrasecha laman loy echtalach. And he wasn't trying to deceive anybody. He just felt that any word that he says will be committing a sin. Now what type of sin is that? Not a sin in the literal sense. But chet, the Alter Rebbe always says, means distortion, right? Chet, avoin, means in Hebrew distortion. Misalignment. It's not going to be aligned. And he didn't want to step out of alignment. They once had told Alter Rebbe that they don't understand Tanya. So the Alter Rebbe said, of course, it's only 50%. You don't have the other 50%. So they said, what's the other 50%? He said, nigun. It's the song. You only have the first. You don't have without the nigun. And that's when he began to teach nigunim and create a whole system of singing. Like you can hear in Avinu Malkeinu, it's touching the infinite. Even Keliyata, which in many ways seems simple, and it's touching the Ein Sof. That's what a nigun is. Never mind the Dalet Bavas. So to continue to the frequency of that nigun, of the nigun of Avinu Malkeinu. So I want to share with you, my dearest brothers and sisters, an experience I had myself when I was a child. And it came into my head this morning, and a few minutes ago another part of it came into my head. So I guess it's a sign that I should share it. I was a pretty young boy. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. That's where my impeccable English accent comes from. And I can't remember which year it was, but it was the early 1980s. I was a boy before Bar Mitzvah, a few years before my Bar Mitzvah, maybe even younger. And as you know, I grew up at the feet of the Rebbe, of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And my father was a journalist, and he had a pretty close relationship with the Rebbe. And the Rebbe would give matzahs the night of Pesach, after Ma'ariv, to a few people who worked in his secretariat and in his home. Just like 10, 15 people. He would give them matzah like a participation in their Seder. And my father, due to his relationship with the Rebbe, was also invited to come in. So as a child, I would try to tag along for a very unique experience. By the Rebbe, every Yom Tov, you could see on his face the energy of that holiday. So Pesach, you looked at his face, you could see what liberation looked like. Rosh Hashanah, you saw what Tamlichuni Aleichem, the coronation of Hashem. Yom Kippur, Yechidush HaBenefesh. Sukkah is Mansam Chasenu. Every Yom Tov. And was Pesach night, right after Ma'ariv. They say Hallel by the Chassidim, so after Hallel, he went into what's called by Chassidim Gan Eden Atachten, the corridor before the Rebbe's room, already by the Alter Rebbe, they used to call Gan Eden Atachten. The room itself, they used to call Gan Eden Ha'elyon, the higher Gan Eden. We're standing there, and there was 10, 15 people. It was most of the Gaboyim, Meshashim, people who lived in the house, worked in the office. And I was there with my father as well. The Rebbe had a custom, the adults, he would give a whole matzah. Children, he always gave a piece of a matzah. So he always did it. And it's never a problem in a pound of matzah, it's not a problem to find broken pieces of matzah. It's usually a problem to find a whole matzah, right? So it was never an issue, it was always broken pieces. Prusot as they're called. And it came my turn, it was after I remember he opened his door, his face was glowing mamish like a malach Elokim. So a simcha, a liberation. It was a very, very special, intimate, spiritual, it was a spiritual radiance that I could experience in my body. And I went by, and the Rebbe was standing right there. It was just me and him at his door. And he takes a look at this. He had this brown bag, a pound or two of matzah. I guess you always just saw a bunch of broken pieces, like by everybody's pound of matzah. And he looked, it was a whole matzah. So he picked up the matzah to find the broken piece, and the second matzah was also whole. Wow. He went to the third matzah, it was also whole. And he starts picking up matzah after matzah. I don't know how that miracle happened, my mazel. But every matzah in that pound was a whole matzah. There was no broken piece. I actually never saw such a thing, not before, not after. And my hunch is that even the Rebbe was surprised. How do I know? Because when he finished, he took both of his hands, he took the entire pound of matzah, and he turned it over like this, and he started to go down again to find the broken piece of matzah. Like I think he was certainly that the pony is hiding somewhere, you know, there's somewhere a broken piece. So he turned the whole thing over, and it took some time, you know, and I was just standing there, and my thought was, just give me a whole matzah. If you don't tell, I won't tell. Won't get anybody jealous. I'm not gonna, flaunt it to anybody. I got a whole matzah. Just give me a whole matzah. Come on, we don't have to make a whole commotion here. I didn't say it. I was just, this was just my instinctive animal thought, experience, flow of consciousness. And he finished going down the whole thing. Again, there was no broken matzah. And I could see what seemed to me as a little kid that the Rebbe was like thinking what to do. He obviously did not feel comfortable breaking a matzah, which I understood. By yachatz, you break a matzah because that's what the Seder says. But just to take a matzah and break it, I guess he didn't feel comfortable doing it. And I saw he started to step away into his room to go find another box of matzah and find, the winner, find the broken matzah for yours truly. And he started to step away, but then he came right back. I guess the Rebbe decided for whatever not to do that. And he came back to this pound of matzah, and he looked a little hesitantly, and he picked up the first matzah. He went to the second matzah. I'm not sure why he took it. He broke it. He broke it in front of me. He gave me the broken piece, looked me in my eyes, and said, "Akasher and unafreilichen Pesach." And I took my matzah, and I went home. Then was my father, and we went to our Seder at home. I didn't remember this story. I mean, I remember the story, but I didn't think of it much. But years later, many, many years later, I don't know why, I was experiencing some difficult and hard times. And the experience just came into my head. It was like a gilui, like a revelation that came into my head. And I started to think, what was the reason that the Rebbe wouldn't give me a whole matzah? It was only whole matzahs. Why did he give me a broken matzah? Maybe it was to teach me that you're a machzis hashekel, always be part of a whole matzah. Maybe it was a blessing for my wife, my second half. If I would consider myself a whole matzah, that wouldn't work. It's the machzis hashekel that allows you to connect to another half. And maybe that's true. But then I thought perhaps there was also a profound message and maybe even a shlichus, a mission. At least that's how I took it. And that is, the Rebbe was saying, don't be afraid of broken places, and don't be afraid of broken situations, and don't be afraid of broken people. Because the moment this story popped into my head, I was dealing with letters of situations of people's lives that have been so devastated and broken so profoundly. And at some point I was asking myself, how did I fall into this? Like, what am I supposed to tell these people? I don't know. I don't have prophetic knowledge or some otherworldly insight to be able to guide them. I don't know. And sometimes there's so much despair that can take over. There's so much desperation, so much melancholy, so much sadness when you learn about the pain that people have gone through or are going through. All forms of pain, but the common denominator is pain that breaks, pain that shatters hearts, shatters souls, and sometimes creates an impact that even the person themselves doesn't know about. And that's when the story came in and I realized the Rebbe was saying, I'm not going to give you a whole matzah. I want you to realize that you need to be able to create space for broken matzahs and for broken people and not turn away, not be afraid of it, to be able to look at it, to be able to remain present with empathy, with compassion, not to divert your eyes because it's uncomfortable. Because really nobody has anything to say. Lo ish dvarim anochi. There's no words that can match the levels of pain that people experience, the levels of grief, especially during the last year in this country, in Eretz Yisrael. The only thing one can do is presence. Presence does match the frequency of pain, because presence is the presence of soul, it's the presence of love, it's the presence of life. Real presence is Gilui Elokut. Real presence is a revelation of the divine. That's what presence means. Because what is presence? Presence is vulnerability. The Baal Shem Tov says that Hashem recreates the world every moment. So presence means that I'm here right now in this moment of creation. What's going to happen the next moment? I don't know. Which is why it's so hard to be present, because it's the ultimate vulnerability. It's much easier to live in my mind and control what's going to happen the next minute. And then I could already prepare my response. Right? I can come into a room and I prepare for it. Mentally, we prepare, but it's a form of control. Real presence, when you're sitting with your husband in a room or with your wife in a room, you're sitting with a friend in a room, you're sitting with your child in a room, you're sitting with yourself in the room. What does presence look like? Presence looks like that no hijackers control any part of my mind. I'm fully here with my heartbeat and my energy, and I don't know what's going to be. I really don't. I'm purely vulnerable. But at that moment, I'm a channel for creation that happens right here, right now. The next moment, I just breathe again, and I'm here again, right here, right now. That's a very, very vulnerable experience. But that's the only experience in which we channel the actual divine energy in the room. And that has some very mystical power to be able to contain space for somebody who's experiencing very profound pain. I can't tell you how much that comforted me. The ability not to be able to fix anything, just to be able to not be afraid of a broken matzah. Not be afraid of a broken matzah. Not try to minimize it, challenge it, explain it, rationalize it, give some smart aleck response, find some philosophical, interesting, it's like irrelevant. I remember I was once invited for a kumsitz for yeshiva boys who went to a yeshiva that was for children who had a certain, it was very difficult for them in what you would call, mainstream yeshivas. I don't know if there's such a thing anymore, but what they used to call mainstream yeshivas. And they had this special yeshiva for them, and they were doing a kumsitz near my house. So the guy asked me if I could come over. So they were sitting with guitars and drums and violins and playing beautiful music, and there was a fire pit, and they were roasting hot dogs and marshmallows and chicken wings. And they were singing a nice song. I still remember they were doing Lemana Chai V'Reyai, Lemana Chai V'Reyai. And I'm sitting at the fire singing with them. And a boy comes over to me, he sits down right near me. In the middle of the song, he says, Rabbi, why did my mother die? I didn't know his name. I didn't know that his mother died. I mean, I knew he had a mother because everybody has a mother, but I didn't know who he was. I didn't know that his mother died. I said, I am so, so sorry. When did she pass away? It was 10 years ago. Why? Why did she die? I'm like, I don't know. What happened? She tells me his mother had 11 children. He was one of the oldest. And she had cancer and she died. I loved my mother. Why did she die? Why did she die? Now he was 21 or 22, and this was when he was 11. He lost his mother when he was 11, and he was one of the older kids. And I looked at him, and I said, I'm so, so sorry, but I don't know. And we continued to sing. And at some point, he looks at me, and he says, so you don't have a reason? You don't have a reason? I'm like, I really don't. All I could say is, I'm so, so sorry. And maybe I could put my hand on you. He says, sure. And so I put my hand on him, and we're just singing. I see he starts crying. And then he looks at me and he says, you know, Rabbi Why, I was waiting for this answer 10 years. I'm like, what were you waiting for? What did I tell you? I didn't tell you anything. And he tells me, after my mother died, I was so devastated, I asked my father to help me. So my father took me to a bunch of people, experts on theology. And I asked them all the question. Everybody gave an answer. Everybody had an explanation. This one knew about Gilgulim. This one knew about this tikkun, that tikkun, yenish tikkun, whatever. Everybody had an answer. And he says, and the more they gave me answers, the more I got angry and furious. And I just detached from them. And he said, finally, I was waiting 10 years. He looked at me and he said, I don't know. And I asked him, why was that so meaningful to you? And he said, because when people give answers, they delegitimize the experience. Could you just stay present with the experience? And I understood what he said. Even if people mean well, the explanations and the answers, what they do is, they put it in a context of intellect, which doesn't match up with the depth of the grief, the depth of the pain. When somebody says, I don't know, it's not just ignorance, I don't know. It's paying tribute to the intensity of the experience. It's paying tribute to the profundity of what people are going through without the need to sugarcoat it, to be able to see the reality for what it is, and just to be able to hold on to the broken matzah. But then recently, and actually somebody suggested this to me, I realized that there was something deeper in the story. The Rebbe didn't just give me a broken matzah, he broke the matzah. In fact, there was no broken matzah to give. All the matzahs were whole. He broke the matzah and gave it to me. And then I realized there was something even deeper here. Because just to be able to look at brokenness and hold space for it is an incredible thing. But there's something even deeper that we can give ourselves and people. And that is remembering that even the brokenness comes from whole matzahs. Which means, essentially, we're whole. The brokenness was an act that happened. Every soul is a chelik elokam mimal. If every soul is a chelik elokam mimal, so that means every soul is divine. If it's divine, it's infinite. If it's infinite, it's indestructible. So all the brokenness happens on a frequency where we don't see the infinity. But how does a soul that's infinite come into a frequency where you don't see the infinity? So that's one of the biggest questions of Chassidus. And the answer is that the soul basically volunteers and tells God, I got this. And I'm going to go in to the place of finiteness where we're going to create what's called a dira b'tachtaina. We're going to create a home for infinity in a finite situation. What is dira b'tachtaina? Dira b'tachtaina, one of the great expressions in the Medrash and in the Alter Rebbe's teachings frequently explained, is that the whole purpose of creation was not to go back to a place of oneness and infinity where there's no universe, because that was there before, as we said earlier. The whole purpose of creation was to be able to heal the fragments, to be able to heal the Shirat hakelim, the broken vessels, to be able to reveal the infinite oneness within the experience of fragmentation and brokenness. Who can do this? Only the soul that is so whole, is so infinite, entrusts itself and is entrusted with this mission of going into the deepest places of darkness and saying, not only won't I falter, but on the contrary, I will reveal right here, right now, the perfection of the moment and the love of the moment and the fact that ultimately my role is to bring the infinite oneness into this very experience. Or as David HaMelech says, Gam ki elech begeit salmavis, I walk in the valley of the shadow of death and I don't have fear because you're with me. Or later in Kuf Lametes 139, Imesek shamayim sham ata v'atziya sha'ili neka. I go up to heaven, you're there. I come into the abyss, hineka, here you are. The angels couldn't do this. When the malachim were sent down to this earth, they failed miserably. They were just morally destroyed. They belong in heaven. That's their place. They're good there. Kadosh, 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 etc. The soul has that uncanny and incredible ability to be the interlacing link between heaven and earth and bring literally the gavaya b'yoser, the highest, into the lowest. So what the Rebbe was saying, I think, was something much deeper. And that is, I want you to know that all the matzahs are really whole. Everything is really whole. What seems like so broken is also a derivative of wholeness. When you know that it's your wholeness making space for your brokenness. It's your wholeness that contains your brokenness. It's not your brokenness that contains your brokenness. It's your wholeness that contains your brokenness. And that's really the secret of the whole story with the sun and the moon. The Gemara says in Chulin, Daf Samach, that the Torah says when Hashem created the heavenly luminaries, He created two great luminaries, Shnei Ma'orot HaGadolim. And then later it's the Ma'or HaGadol, Ma'or HaKaton, the great one and the small one. So Rav Shimon ben Lakish says, because in the beginning the sun and the moon were identical. And then the moon came and said, you can't have two kings wearing the same crown. So God says, you're right, diminish yourself. So the sun goes and diminishes itself. But then, the moon. And then the moon says, why? Just because I'm a sensitive guy and I'm saying the truth, I should diminish myself? And Hashem says, yeah, you have a point. You know what? The Jews are going to do their calendar based on you. He's like, I don't care. It's not enough. Okay, Yaakov and David and all the great people will be called Katan. They'll all be called small like you. I don't care. You're going to be seen by day and by night. I don't care. And the moon is not happy, and God says, you know what, you got a point, and therefore every Rosh Chodesh, when we see the new moon, when we celebrate the birth of the new moon, bring a special offering, and it's the only offering that the Torah says, L'Hashem Chatos, it's for God's sin. Haviyu alai kapara shemiyata tiyas hayareach. Bring an atonement for me, because I diminished the moon. Ultimately, I'm the one who's responsible, I'm the one who diminished the moon. Now that's such an interesting thing. Hashem says, I need atonement, but the definition of atonement is that you didn't do what God wanted. So how can God need atonement for not doing what God wanted when it was He who wanted to do what He doesn't want? So maybe you need therapy. Why do you need an atonement? Which is maybe what an atonement means. But what's this? What is this, a joke? Like Hashem says, oh, sorry, I sinned. What do you mean you sinned? Whose will did you violate? And if you violated your will, well, you didn't have to. Do you not know what you want? Like, what's this? It's a joke. The truth is, this is the whole story of creation. The sun and the moon are really equal. The broken matzah and the whole matzah are identical. What is really brokenness? Brokenness is an experience of pain that is sometimes unbearable. But that pain is being in the presence of something so authentic, so true, so mysterious, so infinite that our brains can't control, our logic can't define. Is the presence of Hashem there any less than anywhere else? No. Sometimes even deeper. But there's no way the moon can experience it that way. The moon says something is off, something is off. This is not the story of creation. God says, you're right. From your perspective, you must be small. From His perspective, the sun and the moon are all the same. Our broken moments and our whole moments are identical. Our broken matzahs and our whole matzahs are identical. Our days in which we're flying and the days when you feel like you're in the abyss, from God's perspective, are all part of an infinite wholeness. It's just a journey of your soul through very, very different places and experiences. It's almost like going in all the grooves of reality, Shirat and bringing there the light. But from my perspective, I could never experience that, because if I would experience it that way, I wouldn't be in the grooves, I wouldn't be in the abyss, I wouldn't be in B'tachtainim. Then I'll just be B'elyonim. So from my experience, from the moon's experience, it's like, we can't be identical. God is like, you are identical. No, we can't. God says, okay, so diminish yourself. From your experience, you'll be small. And then, wait, why am I small? Why am I dealing with all this? Come on, why am I dealing with all this? What am I dealing with? So he says, well, the Jews will do their calendar with you. I don't care. Yaakov, David, everybody is connected to you. You're like connected to everything. I don't get. God says, at the end of the day, this is all my fault. Ultimately, this whole Dira B'Tachtainim thing, this whole idea of creating this universe, like I really came up with it, I need the atonement here. In other words, he's ultimately taking accountability for the fact that our journey is a painful journey through darkness and brokenness. So there's a profound paradox here at the core of it all. And that is, on one hand, to deny brokenness, to be naive, to be detached, to be numb, is really not allowing ourselves to go into that experience. On the other hand, to go into that experience is so powerful. The gravitational pull of pain is so deep that I could be pulled right into my darkness. And this is where we always need to have that vision. And it's the whole matzah that really comes into the broken matzah. You're whole. Everybody is whole. Everybody is whole. You can't not be whole. You're a chelek Elokai mimal. You are whole. And it's my wholeness that wants to hold on to my brokenness. It's my wholeness that makes space for my brokenness. And the two exist simultaneously. It's the sun and the moon. Shnei ma'oris agdailam. And even when I'm holding that brokenness, I won't feel the wholeness, because if I do, I'm not holding on to the brokenness. This is really the gift, what I experienced from the Alter Rebbe, the gift from the Alter Rebbe, the Balagula of Yud Tet Kislev. I know many of you here listen to a lot of our shiurim in Torah and Likutei Torah, and the Alter Rebbe's teachings, and the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov and Chassidus in general. What is the real gift of that? What is the real gift of Chassidus? What is it? It's cute vertlach. Yeah, it's a lot of nice vertlach. On the parsha, there's all cute vert and good stories and good songs. But that's not the gift of Chassidus. The real gift of Chassidus was, it started to bring and synthesize and showing that Galus and Geula are really one. Redemption and exile are really one. The Baal Shem Tov was born in 1698. It was a time of profound darkness. It was right after the pogroms of 1648 and 1649. Tachtat. It was right after the Shabsi Tzvi, false Mashiach debacle. The Jewish people were morally, physically, emotionally, psychologically, socially impoverished, broken, devastated. The Baal Shem Tov came to the world. What did he say? He didn't come to say a few nice vertlach. He also didn't come to people should have herring and kugel. He also didn't come just that people should have a certain garb or uniform. I mean, it's all nice and good and beautiful. It's not what he did. What he did was, the Baal Shem Tov, with his very presence and with his very teachings, he allowed people to be able to experience a part of themselves that they may have forgotten. Somebody once said, love is learning the song in somebody else's heart and singing it back to them when they might have forgotten it. There's a song in every person's heart. It's a song of wholeness. It's a song of Ein Sof. It's not a song you could describe in words. The reason you can't describe it in words, because it comes before words were created. It's pre-verbal. It's elokus. It's Ein Sof. In that space, there's absolute clarity. There's also absolute bliss. There's also absolute joy. There's also absolute vulnerability. There's no control. There's also an absolute experience of a frequency of surrender, trust, faith, love, and oneness. And it's a very, very, very deep frequency. And every mimer of the Alter Rebbe takes you back into that place. You just have to be very vulnerable when you learn it, very vulnerable. And suddenly you start feeling, and of course if there's blockages it's hard to feel, but if we work on our blockages, and that's a lot of work, and you start feeling it, it's just a presence of wholeness that doesn't have answers for the pain, because there's no real answers. It comes from a place that's deeper than logic. God created logic, so he's not going to be explained by logic. It doesn't have answers, but it could contain it and look at it without flinching, because somehow it knows, not through knowledge, but it knows in the very core of its being that this is part of an infinite oneness, even though I'll never figure this out with my mathematical left brain. There's an incredible teaching from the Alter Rebbe, the Baal HaGeula this week, Torah Parshas Miketz. It says in Zohar, Parshas Vayechi, Zakoyi inun, tzadikoyi dikshoit. So special are the true tzaddikim, because every day in this world they imagine that it might be their last day. They look at every day and they say, okay, today I might pass away. And the Alter Rebbe says, why is that so special? Like, why is that the level of the greatest tzaddikim? In fact, he says, it seems like a pretty low level. That basically, thank you, what keeps them in check is, I might die, and I don't want to end up in the barbecue. That doesn't seem like such an elevated level. In other words, what's motivating me to be a mensch and a good person and a Jew today is, I may die, and the time of reckoning is going to come. Okay, I hear that. But is that really the highest level of the tzaddikim, that every day they imagine this might be my last, and therefore I better behave because the fun is over very soon? Alter Rebbe says, like, what's the godless? What's the greatness? And then he says, that's not what the Zohar means. The Zohar means something completely, completely different. And this is what he says. It says in Gemara, when a soul goes from this world to the next world, it has to go through what's called Nahar Dinur. Nahar Dinur is a river made of fire. What does that mean, a river made of fire? So it's a spiritual, it's a metaphor. So the Chazal say, and the Zohar says, that the soul can't experience any of the bliss of the next world as long as it still has memories from this world. And the reason is because the bliss of a neshama beyond the guf is so infinite that if there's anything blocking it, it can't experience it fully. So the soul needs to free itself up, not only from toxicity, but even from memories that keep it gravitationally, they pull it down and they don't allow it to experience the full splendor of Ein Sof. So therefore, when the soul leaves this world, it goes through a whole journey and a process to be able to, so to speak, clean it up and bring it back to its pristine infinity, oneness. So now it could be subsumed in the infinite bliss for eternity without any distractions. That's what the idea of cleaning the soul, the idea of Gehenim, the idea of Nahar Dinur. It's not punishments in the sense like I'll get you back. It's rather the cleaning that the soul can experience the full splendor of infinity. So the Alter Rebbe says this is what the Zohar means. The tzaddik thinks to himself, today might be my last day, I got it. What happens then? In order to go to Gan Eden, I need to forget everything. Because as long as I remember some stuff, I'm still holding on to stuff. And as long as I'm holding on to stuff, how can I experience infinity? Stuff is the opposite of infinity. Stuff is like stuff. So I got to let go of all stuff, which is hard. Who wants to let go of anything? We don't like to let go because that's our form of control. I hold on to everything. So the tzaddik thinks, but if I want to go to Gan Eden, I won't be able to because I'm stuck in stuff. And every thought is a universe. So that's why the soul goes to the Har Dinur and lets go of everything, and then it can go in Gan Eden. And then he says, but what's Gan Eden? Gan Eden, the Gemara says, is Ziv HaShechina. It's the radiance of the Shechina. It's like the ray of the sun. But one second, what is Torah, mitzvahs, and tefillah? Torah, mitzvahs, and tefillah is atzmos. It's Hashem's essence. So he says, this is what the tzaddik thinks. If to go into Gan Eden, which is only the radiance of the Shechina, I have to let go of everything in order to be able to experience Ziv HaShechina. What do I need to do in order to be able to experience a davening? What do I need to do in order to be able to experience Torah that I'm learning? What do I need to do in order to be able to experience a mitzvah, which is not a ray of the Shekhinah, it's the essence of the Shekhinah? How much do I have to let go of everything? Everything. So this is what allows them to live life to the fullest. This is what allows them to suck the marrow out of life today. This is what allows them that wherever they are, they're present in their full glory because they let go of everything. That's what it means they imagine every day to be last. It's not this pessimism, I'm about to die in a few minutes. You know, like Drew, I'm having a stroke, I had a stroke, I'm in the middle of a heart attack. My head hurts, my back hurts, my neck hurts. That's what we have the doctor right here in the front row. But the bottom line is, it's much deeper. It's not like I'm pessimistic with this sense of despair and doom. Chalila. That's not a way to live. It's a much deeper idea. It's the idea that they imagine, if this would be Mamad the last day and I want to touch Gan Eden, what am I going to hold? I'm going to be holding on to things. I'm going to be holding on to this worry, to that worry, to this anxiety, to what you think of me, what he thinks of me, what she thinks of me, to this grudge, to that pain, this pain, that pain. I hold on to things only because I don't know who I am. I don't know that vulnerability and infinity is the only natural frequency anybody wants to be in. When we don't know who we are, we create substitutes with all other types of stuff simply as a survival mechanism. And essentially what you could say then is as follows. The whole Chassidus came to teach Jews who were then living in Eastern Europe what it means to be in Eretz Yisrael on a spiritual level. What is Eretz Yisrael? What is the Holy Land? The land where Hashem's eyes are from the beginning of the year till the end of the year. The land of Kedusha, the land of holiness. The land of intense holiness. And the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe, who never made it to Eretz Yisrael physically, what were they really teaching? Like the Baal Shem Tov used to say, Ein Geula ela b'das, Ein Galus ela b'das. Exile and redemption are states of mind, or states of consciousnness. For the Baal Shem Tov, this wasn't words. This was very, very real. You know, there's that famous story of one of his great Chassidim. His name was Reb Wolf Kitzes. Reb Wolf Kitzes really wanted to go to Eretz Yisrael. The Baal Shem Tov didn't think every soul has its shlichus. You have to know what God wants from you. And the Baal Shem Tov felt that that was not his place. But he really wanted to go. So the Baal Shem Tov told him no, and he asked again, and the Baal Shem Tov every time said no. And then he decided he's just going. He couldn't hold back. His love to Eretz Yisrael was too deep. So what happened? He starts the journey. And as he leaves the shtetl, who does he meet? The Baal Shem Tov. And his wagon is filled with suitcases. I don't know how many suitcases, but whatever it was. And the Baal Shem Tov sees him. What's going on? So, he says the truth. You don't lie to your Rebbe. So the Baal Shem Tov says, okay, but last Shabbos stay with me. Okay, can't refuse that. The Baal Shem Tov says, it's Erev Shabbos, it's Friday afternoon. Come to the mikveh with me. This was a unique offer. The Baal Shem Tov asking him to come to the mikveh. Baal Shem Tov went to the mikveh, and then Reb Wolf goes into the mikveh, and in the mikveh he has a vision. And in the vision he traveled to Eretz Yisrael. And he went to Eretz Yisrael, and he's so excited, and he comes into the border of Eretz Yisrael, and he sees somebody, and he says, where's Yerushalayim? And they point, and he gets on the donkey, goes to Yerushalayim. And where's the Harabayas? They point. Donkey takes him to the Harabayas. And where's the Makam HaMikdash? Where's the place of the Mikdash? They point. This is all in the mikveh. And he gets to the Harabayas, and he gets to the place of the Beis HaMikdash, and then he says, and where's the place of the Kodesh HaKadoshim? And the person shows him, and he goes to the place of the Holy of Holies, and he goes in. And he sees the Aron. And he opens up the lid, the kapyrus on the Aron, and he sees it's empty. It's empty. Where are the luchas? He says, the luchas are in Mezhebush. The luchas are in Mezhebush. That's what he saw in the mikveh. That's the story. What does this really mean? What this really means is I could live in Eretz Yisrael physically, but what do we say in Musaf? Galinu me'artzeinu. Even when I'm living in Eretz Yisrael, we were exiled. Right? The Imre Yemis of Ger, somebody's wanted they should change the nusach of Nachim on Tisha B'Av. Because what do we say Nachim on Tisha B'Av? Take a look at Yerushalayim, it's desolate, it's destroyed, there's nothing here, right? And somebody said, come on, it's a nice city, take a look. A lot of construction going on where I am, they don't stop. The sun rises and construction begins. So not bad for a desolate, destroyed Yerushalayim. So somebody wanted to change Nachem. And the Imre says the guy is so clueless. Chazal weren't just talking about the physical Jerusalem. There's Yerushalayim Shel Mata, Yerushalayim Shel Maila. Yerushalayim Shel Mata is being built, but Yerushalayim Shel Maila is still pretty desolate. That's why Yerushalayim Shel Mata doesn't reflect, or Eretz Yisrael doesn't necessarily reflect its full glory, its full splendor. That's why for so many years, a lot of confusion and ambivalence in this country. A lot of confusion and ambivalence. I don't have to elaborate to this audience here. the consequences of not just ambivalence, of self-loathing and self-hate and self-shame and self-doubt, and having the inability to be able to declare to the world who we are and why we're here and what we're all about, etc. So what happens is, the Baal Shem Tov is teaching that the Luchos is a state of consciousness. Kodesh HaKadoshim lives physically in the Harabayas, but it lives spiritually, v'shachanti b'soichem, in the person. So the whole Chassidus wanted to give the Jewish people the taste of Eretz Yisrael, of Geula, in a visceral way, even when they weren't living there, because they couldn't live there. That's where Pinchas of Karetz, one of the great Hasidic masters, said that when the Baal Shem Tov was born, the Jewish people were in a comatose state. And when somebody's in a faint, one of the things you do is you whisper your name. You whisper his name into his ear to revive him. The Baal Shem Tov's name was Yisrael. So when the Jewish people were in a comatose state, Hashem whispered our name into us in the presence of the Baal Shem Tov. That's Yisrael. So the Baal Shem Tov said, Geula and Galus are states of mind, states of consciousness. A person can be in a state of consciousness, of Geula. And what does that look like? The moment I tune in to that part of me that is always subsumed in infinity, that's what redemption looks like. And Geula, Geula are the same words. There's just an Aleph in Geula. It's the Aleph. It's the oneness in the Geula, in the exile, that makes Geula. It's the same circumstances of my life. It's not different circumstances. Geula, Geula. It's just the Aleph. So what the Baal Shem Tov was teaching was that always make space for the brokenness with your wholeness. And that's really the whole secret of Yosef HaTzadik. Yosef HaTzadik went to the lowest places. He felt the pain. He cried. Nobody cries in Tanakh as much as Yosef. Nobody. He's always crying. Every other meeting, he's crying. He's always crying. You can rely he's going to be crying. You know, people look at Yosef like he didn't, like, he's punishing his brothers and all this. He must have been a tough kid. And maybe because of what he went through, all the trauma, he became tough and harsh and hard, and he closed his heart. But that person doesn't cry constantly. Yosef's tears don't dry up. He's feeling everything. He's vulnerable. He feels everything. So how does he not only survive but thrive to the point that when he meets his brothers and he reveals himself, Ani Yosef, he says, don't be depressed. Don't worry. I'm good. You didn't sell me. God sent me. The answer is he made space for his brokenness with his wholeness, with the shliach that was in him. What does it mean? Hashem sent me. It means I wasn't sold, I was sent. If I'm sold, I'm just a passive victim. I'm a ping pong ball. Boom, boom, boom. So every morning I wake up, I have to ask myself a question. Was I sold or was I sent? The circumstances were the same. Yosef was sold. He wasn't sent, he was sold. Nobody asked him. He was thrown into a pit once, twice. And as they say in English, no good deed goes unpunished. There was no good deed that he did that didn't go unpunished. Whatever he did right, he was punished. He could have become the most cynical, bitter, depressed human being. What held him? What held him was not that he emotionally detached, which is what some people do with pain, and it makes sense. It's a very classic developmental trauma response. I shut down. I shut my heart. It's too much. Children do this all the time, and then when they grow up as adults, it's very hard for them to feel. They don't feel. Makes a lot of sense. If someone is putting a dagger into my chest, if I stop feeling, if my body becomes, if I detach from my body, my soul flies up, my body just remains a wax museum, Madame Tussauds experience, it's wonderful. You can do whatever you want. Some of these people are actually lauded as intellectually in control. They're not intellectually in control, they're just dead. It's a tragedy. It's a dead man walking, and it's torturous. Whoever shut down their heart knows how torturous it is, because the soul is alive. But it's the alternative. The alternative for the animal soul is death. We get it. Too much pain, shut down. Emotionally detached, freeze. It's called dorsal state. It's called it being in a, there's parasympathetic nervous state system, the sympathetic, the dorsal, you're frozen. And frozen makes sense because in some situations, if you ever watch National Geographic or you go to jungles, you know, one of the very brilliant things that gazelles or antelopes do when the cheetah is chasing them is they go into a place of freeze. They can't run away, so they freeze. They look dead. The cheetah looks at the gazelle. It's not a gazelle that I know. I'm scared, and leaves. The thing is that the gazelles afterwards shake for 30 seconds. They shake out the trauma and they go back to the herd. We live with the stories, and we're like, I probably deserve this. So I remain frozen for 60 years later. I'm still frozen. My system didn't open up. I'm still in danger. I'm still frozen. And it's a very, very torturous place to be in. And the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe wanted to teach people how to be able to remain with open hearts, to experience everything in life with a full flow of consciousness, and yet not only not fall apart, but realize that all of life is about holding space for our brokenness with our wholeness. Your wholeness is never questioned. Your wholeness is absolutely powerful. It's divine. It's elikus. It's chelik elokamimal. You're a frequency of Ein Sof, and that's always true. The only question is how much access I have to it. It's the only real reality. And my entire journey is to be able to reveal that reality in every state that I'm in. And for that, I have to go through it, and Yosef got it. So even as he was going through the experience and feeling the full texture of the pain, and when the moon is feeling the full texture of her waxing and waning, she doesn't know that she's the sun. Because if she would know she is the sun, she would never be able to make dira b'tachtoinim. For that you have to touch the texture of darkness. And only the soul knows how to touch the texture of darkness with its magical touch of infinite wholeness. Only a soul knows how to do that. And that's what the soul teaches all of reality. That's what the soul brings to this world. That's why only the soul can create this type of dira b'tachtoinim. And because of that, Yosef not only prevailed, but his entire life, in many ways, from his perspective, was such a graceful blessing. He looked at himself, he says, I'm not a miserable, bitter victim. I'm on a shlichus. I'm on a mission. I got this text from a little while ago. There was a boy, he's a student of mine, he was going into Lebanon. So before he went in, he sends me this WhatsApp. And he said, I'm about to go into Lebanon. I'm not going to have a phone. I'll hopefully reach out to you in a few weeks when I'm out of here. And he said, I'm going in with my friends. They were just they were learning Chassidus right before they went in. They were like listening to Shiurim. He said, I'm going in to restore and reclaim the glory of the Jewish people, the glory of the Torah, and the glory of God. And it was like almost like an echo from the Chashmonaim. Like I felt like I was living in this Chanukah time. This kid tells me I'm going in to restore the glory of the Jewish people, of the Torah, and of Elokei Yisrael. I'm like, wow, that was like B'mei Matasyahu ben Yochanan Kain Gadol Chashmonayu Yovanov. These are your kids, literally the Chashmonaim. Incredible. Shluchim, kilamichya shlachani elakim lefneichem. What's the power of shlichus, of shlichut? When that soldier, June 6, 1944, if I can use the American example, went to Normandy, and he saw what was happening in Normandy. He didn't look at himself and say, wow, I'm such a loser. They punished me by sending me into this crazy, insane place. He said, no, I'm a good soldier who was sent to defeat the world from Hitler. That's what a shliach understands. He's not naive. He doesn't minimize reality. He doesn't dumb it down. She doesn't ignore it, dilute it, make believe it's not so bad or it's this. No. Yosef knew everything about everything. Simply means my soul's power is of such infinite magnitude. Because of that, it was sent into these spaces where nobody else was sent, in order to defeat an evil and a contamination and bring in a purity and an holiness that is unprecedented. You know, for a long time, people were critical somewhat of the youth of today. You know, they're spoiled, they're narcissistic, they're all entitled. Those who listen to my classes know that I always maintain that the opposite is true. But it's very popular, especially where I come from. You just give them mussar, tell them how spoiled they are and lazy. They should be like their parents and grandparents. Put one foot ahead. Everybody's busy with their emotions. But the truth is, people underestimate our generation. They underestimate the youth. The youth are yakar mikol yakar. They're more precious than anybody imagines. They're a generation of redemption. They're a generation that were born into an energy of geula, and therefore they're toxic. They are allergic, I should say, to a Judaism of galus. They're allergic to it. That's why people say, why don't they buy everything that we bought? Because they want to hear a Yiddishkeit of Mashiach, of geula. And what's the Yiddishkeit of geula? It's the Yiddishkeit of Einaid Mulvadai. It's a Yiddishkeit of pure synthesis, of complete oneness. It's a Yiddishkeit where there's no fragmentation between the soul and the body, between heaven and earth, between the outer and the inner. There's no fragmentation. There's no such a thing that you don't live what you are on every level. You know, that alienation, that fragmentation, it worked for many, many years and for many, many people. But it's not the energy of redemption. The energy of redemption is goyla, geula, everything becomes one. And in that sense, they are so empowered and they have such a sense of authenticity that is incredibly inspiring. Some weeks ago, I was giving a speech by me in Shul Shabbos, and there was a group from a yeshiva, and they call it the ADHD yeshiva on steroids. And this whole group came, and they were sitting there, like right in front of me. They came for some chufruf. And you know, let's put it this way, I'm not the shortest sermon giver in the universe. So I spoke for quite a while, and this kid sitting right in front of me was like glued and listening. And at the end, he comes over to me and he says, you know, you could have spoken for another 12 hours. I said, well, it was close to that. And he said, yeah, but it could have been another 12 hours. I'm like, I know you for many years. You're like the quintessential ADHD boy. Like, how did you sit here and you're listening? You want me to speak for another one? He said, no, people completely misunderstand me and my ilk. They think we don't know how to concentrate, we don't listen. No, they don't understand. When you don't hit the spot, we can't listen even for 13 seconds. We're done. When you hit the spot, he said, I could sit for 6 hours. And it was so true. When you don't hit the spot, I can't sit for 20 seconds. I can't. If you're touching the core, if you're touching Yechidish B'Nefesh, he says, I could sit here all day. People often underestimate the depth of a lot of our kids' souls, all of our kids' souls. And you've seen it the last year with so many of your children. You know, unsung heroes and sung heroes, mamash like the Chashmanayim. Such a resilience and such a power and such Mesiras Nefesh and such Avas Yisrael. Incredible. And I think, on behalf, of the Jewish people, I want to do a special salute to all the parents who raised such children and embodied them and empowered them. It's incredible. And I know that the pain, what some of you have gone through and are going through this year, because of all of the devastation and on so many different levels, even if not in your own, neighbors and friends and cousins and your own families, etc. And really, it's like in Hebrew there's a word mashber. Everybody knows what mashber means. Mashber means a mashber, a breakdown, shvira. But the word mashber in Hebrew is also isha yoshevet al hamashber, right? A woman sitting on a birthing stool. So the Baal Shem Tov used to say that every mashber is an opportunity for birth. It's always this birthing. Something is being birthed in Klal Yisrael now. Painful it is, but something is being birthed. There's a consciousness being birthed. And when we're being birthed, we need good midwives to be able to catch the new baby and to be able to soothe it and calm it. And that's why the Rebbe once said, what are the words we use for birthday? Yom Huledet. Yom Holedet, Yom Huledet. And it comes, of course, from Parshas Vayeshev. Vayihi, Bayoim, Huledet et Parah. But it's a very strange expression. You know why? Because technically in Hebrew grammar, hu ledet, it should have been the day of the birth of Paroi. Vayihi b'yom ledet Paroi. Hu ledet, Rashi explains, is the day that a midwife helped Paroi's mother give birth. It's like the day when Paroi, we do birthday in English. In Hebrew, we do Yom Holedet, which means the day that the mother was caused and helped to give birth. It's so interesting. Reb Shimshon Raphael Hirsch writes that Paroi was so paranoid about his ego, he didn't want anybody to remember that he was once an infant. So instead of talking about the fact that he was born, no, it's all about the midwife who helped his mother do something. Interesting Rav Hirsch commentary. But the truth is, there's also a deeper element here. And that is, birthing doesn't happen on its own. It says by Shifra and Pua that they told Paroi that the Jewish people are not like the Egyptians, right? The Nashima Ivrias, Ki Chayois Heina. Rashi says they're like animals. They give birth themselves. They don't need midwives. So we couldn't kill the babies. But this was how they sold it to Paroi. The idea is, as a baby comes out, it needs attachment, it needs dveikus. So we don't only talk about the fact that a baby was born, we talk about the people involved in holding the baby and catching the baby and giving presents to the baby. In this time of birth, of mashber, you, the parents, and all of the Jewish people, especially in Eretz Yisrael, are like the midwives, to be able to catch this new baby that's being born, to be able to hold on to it, to be able to look at it, and to be able to see it, and to be able to give that gift to the entire Jewish nation. That's why Vayayehi b'yom hu ledet. That's the mashber. That's the mashber. And the beginning of Kapitel Nun Aleph in Tehillim is Lamnatzeach Mizmor LeDavid B'voy Elav Nasan Hanavi Kasher Ba El Bat Sheva. This is the song of David when Nasan Hanavi came to him after he lived with Bathsheba, and Nasan really gave him a piece of his mind. And that's when David says, "V'chatasi negdi samid leiv nishbar v'nitke lakim lo'isivza." So the masters, the Hasidic masters, say, "What's this clumsy expression? Lamnatzeach mizmor LeDavid bevoy elav nasan hanavi kasher ba el Bathsheba." This is the song of David when Nasan Hanavi came to him when he had intimacy with Bathsheba. It's like bevoy elav kasher ba. And why mizmor LeDavid? Why are you singing? Why are you singing, David? You should be crying after what happened with Bathsheba. And indeed, the whole Mizmor is David HaMelech's remorse and grief. But here it's Mizmor LeDavid. He's singing. When Nasan Hanavi came to him, when he came to Bathsheba, it's almost like the two comings were the same. It's not. Bevoy means he came. Ba Bathsheba means a different type of ba, completely. It was a relationship. So Reb Meir Primishlan said something very powerful. Bevoy elav Nasan Hanavi kasher ba el Bathsheba. Nasan Hanavi came to David HaMelech exactly the same way in which he came to Bathsheba. David HaMelech's relation with Bathsheba was done because of he felt so excited about Bathsheba. So this was his joy, this was his simcha. When Nasan Hanavi comes to David to give him rebuke, he's explaining to him, the only way you'll be able to heal what happened is if you do it with the same joy that you did everything with Bathsheba. So Lamnatzeich Mizmor LeDavid Bevoye love Nasan Hanavi kasher ba, the same way ba Bathsheba. When somebody makes a mistake with a lot of passion, but their repentance is done with gloom and despair and guilt and shame, they're never really healing the core of it. They're just feeling guilty and shame, which is the frequency of the Yetzer Hara usually. It's only when they could heal it with joy, with the same passion. In other words, they realize their wholeness and they heal their brokenness with their wholeness. That's when it's really, really very powerful. So whenever we go in, so here is what it really is about. There's really two approaches. One is that only speaks about wholeness, and then there's one that speaks about brokenness. One is everything is whole and good, and people hashgacha pratis, everything is good. I'm just smiling all day. And sometimes you just feel there's something inauthentic, or I lose a part of my soul, I amputate my emotions. And then there's those who wallow in a lot of grief, which is also very, very normal. It's human. I think the great gift of the Alter Rebbe was, in every Maimer, the whole Tanya, it's always like living in these two frequencies of the sun and the moon, and knowing really, really they're one, but till the moment Mashiach comes, we can't feel that oneness and appreciate it. So on one hand, it's always always knowing that there's a frequency of wholeness you're connected to. And nothing can ever take anybody away from that. The only thing that can take me away from it is my own state of mind. You know, the luchas are immeasurable. Ein geula ela b'das. The Alter Rebbe says in Tanya Perek Mezayim 47, when I choose to live in oneness, I live in oneness. It's my choice. When I choose. I grew up, and for many, many years I had nightmares, constant nightmares about the Holocaust. I still don't know why. I don't know why. Maybe I read a lot about it. Maybe there's mystical reasons. I'm not a superstitious guy, but maybe there's other reasons. I don't know. But always had dreams about the Holocaust, constantly, till today. I'm back to 1942. I've been, I don't know in how many camps in my dreams. And it's pretty disturbing because I wake up and I don't know that it was a dream. It takes me a few seconds. And I'm like, OMG, like not oh my Google. There was no Google in 1941. So, and it was hard. I'm a sensitive person, and even a few nights ago I had one, whatever. It was just, it's interesting. And at some point I realized, somebody helped me realize this, one of the mentors of mine, I realized that as a result of that, there was an experience of me, there was an experience very deep in my brain that at the core of the universe, there is this evil that is so powerful, and it was causing all of these dreams and all of these nightmares, all of this dread. And I realized that at a core consciousness, my animal consciousness, there's a belief that there's like Chas v'Shalom Hitler, like an evil at the core of the universe. And then this person said, look in Tanya chapter 47. Alter Rebbe says, it's totally b'ratzon. You have to want to say that I'm going to live in a state of oneness. What does it mean? I want to say I'm going to live in a state of oneness. It's a vulnerable choice to say that at the core of reality is pure goodness and Ein Sof, and we're all part of it. And it never ever changes. And in that sense, in that space, everything is part of that. It's as perfect as can be. And then realizing that the soul took the whole matzah and broke it and went into a place of brokenness where nobody can see any of this, or at least it's hard to see it. And it looks like controlled by all other crazy, different, insane type of forces. And it's our work is to make that achdus and realize there was a shlichus there. I was sent from a place of wholeness to a place of fragmentation, and constantly be able to hold space for both with full presence of a heart shattered and a deeper heart that's completely whole without minimizing anything. And then I don't have to be afraid of it, and I don't understand it, and I can grieve, I could cry, but my heart stays open, and I can also sing, and I can dance, and I can celebrate. And you'll ask, and how do the two come together? And the answer is, I don't know. I don't know. I don't have to know. Knowledge is a very, very limited tool of experiencing reality. You know, people who live their lives through their brain, it's like eating cake with your brain. You don't eat cheesecake or babka or hot cinnamon bun with your brain. It's like, think about the cinnamon bun. It's not going to cut it. I need to feel it and eat it is the best thing. I mean a healthy cinnamon bun without sugar, without cholesterol, without carbs, without poison, without toxicity, no wheat, chas v'shalom. It's a cinnamon bun made out of kale. And there's a few nitzitzes of cinnamon there, just zeichel l'chorban. But you can't experience music with your eyes. You can't experience life with your brain. It's a terrible, horrible way that Ashkenazim thought they could experience life. For those of us who come from the glorious Ashkenazic descent, it doesn't cut it. The brain is a divine gift to be used for brainy stuff. Like if you have to figure out a taisvis with your brain, so be it. Use it. We all love it. It's a gift. But to experience life with your brain, b'smashiga? Yeah, it's like watching your child's wedding on Zoom, you know. Yeah, you don't do that. You see everything. It's like under a chuppah, you know, the chassan taking pictures, selfies with the kala under the chuppah. So we have memories. Excuse me. The brain doesn't have to understand. And that's also what the Alter Rebbe and the Baal Shem Tov taught. Lo yesh dvarim anochi. When you go into the place where the brain doesn't have to understand, you're free. Vayanas vayetze hachutza. You could fly. The brain is a tool. It's an amazing tool, but it's just one tool. Kulam bechachma asisa. The Alter Rebbe says chachma is like asiya. Don't take it so seriously. It's important. It's like asiya. Once I go above there, I could just breathe. I can experience life. And in that experience of life, there's so much wholeness. And there's so much brokenness. If you look at Jewish history today, I think it's the greatest testimony to this. You know, on one hand, we have so much to be grateful for. You know, we've come such a long way. On the other hand, there's so much brokenness and so much grief. And what really breaks the hearts of so many of us is we realize in which era it happened. You know, nobody gave Hitler Poland. Nobody gave Hitler Lithuania, Ukraine. Nobody gave Hitler Europe. He conquered them. I mean, Chamberlain gave him Czechoslovakia and said we have peace in our time. But no Jews gave him these countries. This war, it was places that were given to the enemy by Jews. You know, Gaza was given to them. Lebanon was given to them. The PA was resurrected by the Jewish people. So that's the pain. You know, people ask, the Rebbe said 30 years ago, it's the time of Geula. This is what the time of Geula looks like. But the truth is that our generation, pro-Holocaust, saw credible miracles. God told the Jewish people, here is Eretz Yisrael, here is Yerushalayim, here is Hebron, here is Beis Lechem, here is Eretz Yisrael, it's yours. It's yours. That's what happened. But Jews are very, very powerful people. And when we're brainwashed and indoctrinated and really misguided, or I would put it differently, when we have 2,000 years of gullus trauma, and we don't know who we are and what we are, and we live with shame and ambivalence and inner insecurity. Like the Rebbe used to say, the greatest gullus is the gullus to the Keil Zara Asher B'Kir B'cha, the gullus to the Yetzer Hara inside of yourself. When you don't know who you are, and instead of being full of joy and conviction and dignity, and then the world really respects you, instead you're busy appeasing and appeasing and appeasing and sending your neck out for the shechita, and they hate you even more and embarrass you even more and denigrate you even more. Like Churchill once said, appeasement is feeding the crocodile in the hope that you will be eaten last. That's what appeasement is. You feed the crocodile. When Jews are so confused, don't know the difference between a friend and an enemy. They don't know a difference between somebody who wants to kill their children, somebody who wants to protect their children. It's such a horrific confusion. You see what Gullus did to the Jewish brain, how it distorted it, how it traumatized it so much. But it's also true individually when we live with that inner shame and we don't know who we are. You know, we mirror that. People can't be afraid of their light. And that's the gift of Yud Tet Kislev, the gift of Chassidus, is the gift of giving the Jewish people back their infinity, their Ein Sof. It's the feeling they had when they left Mitzrayim. They stood by Har Sinai. When they built the first Beis HaMikdash, when they lit the menorah for 8 days, they saw the menorah burning for 8 days, etc. It wasn't just things that happened. It was a state of consciousness. It was a frequency they tuned into. And that the Baal Shem Tov taught, I can tune into every day if I really want. But wanting doesn't just mean I want. Wanting means I have the courage to be able to know the difference between my defense mechanisms and my divinity, my coping mechanisms and my divinity. The places in me that create blockages and have all these belief systems about the world that are horrible, and I make space for it because it's part of my brokenness, and then I tune into the frequency of my deepest soul, where Einaid Malvadai, and there's so much love. And I want to say, and then we'll go to questions, I think the Shloimeh once said, the Shloimeh Kalbach, he'll give me the date when he said it. Rish Chodesh, we say, Avas Olam Tavi Lahem. Uvris Avais Labanim Tisk is also a beautiful song. Avas Olam Tavi Lahem. Bring them Avas Olam. Give the Jewish people Avas Olam. What's Avas Olam? Literally eternal love. Avas Olam, eternal love. But the Tanya says Avas Olam also means all the love of the world. The love of the world. So here's one interpretation. Avas Olam, how much love is there in the world right now? If you take all the love that's just right here in the room in Shiras David, how much love is there in the room right now? If you take every mother's heart here and every woman's heart here, how much love is there to all of your loved ones? A lot, right? I could see, I could feel. How much love? A lot of love in this room. Now take all the love that exists in the whole Efrat, and then in the whole Eretz Yisrael, of every child, every young man, every young woman, every child, adult, soldier, every Jew in Eretz Yisrael, and then the whole world. And then take all the love that exists in the world, Avas Olam, how much love is there in the world? Now take all the love that existed in the universe from the beginning till now. All the love that any mother had to her child, or any person had to another person. How much love is there? That's a lot of love. So we say, Avas Olam Tavi Lahem. That love is a reality. It's an existence. It's here. The only question is if I tune into it. It's a reality of love. That's the love that the Baal Shem Tov had. That's the love the Alter Rebbe experienced. That's the love the Rebbe felt. It's Avas Olam Tavi Lahem. When you bring something, it's here. Bring me a bottle of water because it's here. Avas Olam Tavi Lahem. Just bring it to them. Deliver it to them. Let them feel the love. That's my blessing today to all of us. We should be able to Tavi Lahem. Nothing has to be created. Avas Olam. There's so much love in everybody's heart. You don't even imagine how much love there is. If you would imagine, you would have kloisa nefesh. The soul would go, whoops. That's how much love. It's such an intense experience of love. It's like unbelievable. And once you even touch that once, all the other things, they exist, but they melt, they fade away into oblivion in the context of how much wholeness you have, how much greatness. When everybody could see that their broken matzah wasn't created as a broken matzah. In the world of the Rebbe, there's only whole matzahs. In the world of the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe, there's only whole matzahs. When you look in the mirror, I want you to see a whole matzah. It's hard because I can tell you a billion stories of all my broken matzahs. And you know what? They're all true on a certain frequency. There's my mistakes. There's my wounds, there's my history, there's my childhood. Everybody has. There's broken relationships, there's disappointments, there's frustrations. And then there's all the issues with the kids, right? Yeah? You have that in Efrat too, probably, no? Got some issues with the kids, right? Yeah? So there's the issues, there's the physical dangers, Gaza, etc., etc. There's the spiritual and emotional dangers. There's the kids who are taking you already on rides for a lot of years. Right? And all of these broken matzahs. But remember how the broken matzah at the Seder, yachatz, right? We break the matzah. And we put away on the side one of the big pieces. And then we eat it, the afikaiman. And who's the one that finds the broken matzah? The afikaiman, it's our children. And then they deliver it to us. We hid it. We thought we hid it very, very well. But that's their expertise. Because in life, whatever the parents hide, the children are going to expose. They're going to reveal. We have tried 2,000 years to hide our stuff. And in this generation, God has told our children, reveal everything. And our kids are doing an amazing job in driving their parents and grandparents insane by revealing everything. I thought this one was repressed for 2,000 years professionally. I've built lids and lids and lids and lids, buildings, layers, debris. It works perfectly. The Shadchanim think we're the most perfect family that has existed since before Adam Arisha. This is the quintessential Shidduch family. Everybody, you hear this family, it's unbelievable. And then there's that one boy who's just too authentic. And he's like, yeah, let's show the world this family. The glory of this family. And parents have a choice. Either we go crazy and like, how dare you? How dare you? And it just shows the depth of our trauma. And real parents who worked on themselves take the broken matzah, the afikayim, and they look at their children and they say, thank you. Thank you. That's what they're doing. They're revealing all the afikayim. It's tzafun. Tzafun means it's hidden. It comes out. But why does it come out? Because when infections fester, they can't be healed. So everything comes out. And when it comes out, hold space for it. Hold space. Because only when we hold space for the broken matzah with our whole matzah can we heal it. If not, we remain broken. Avas olam tavi lahem. There's so much love to each one of your children. When you look at a child, especially the child that's challenging you deeply, just look at your child a little deeper. and remember what he or she looked like when they were 1 year old. You remember? What did you see in that child? You saw a malach elikim. You saw a chelik elikam imal. You think just because he's 17, he's not a chelik elikam imal mamash anymore? You think once they're 13 and they lose their dimples, it's no more chelik elikam imal mamash? Now it's just a bunch of what? Tyrants, dictators, here to ruin our lives? It's the same chelik elikam imal. It's the same thing. Just look and see the 1 year old eyes. You'll see it. You'll see it. Because if parents are not going to hold space for it, who will? It doesn't mean there's no disappointments, it doesn't mean there's no pain, it doesn't mean there's no difficulties, it doesn't mean there's no challenges, but always hold the challenges with the wholeness. Avas olam tavi lahem. There's so much love in the room. There's so much love in your hearts. There's so much love in all of our hearts. So we pray, we bless each other with so much love that we should be able to always go into that space. Always live in that space. Always be able to let go of everything else, like the Alter Rebbe says. Imagine that even for the Ziv HaShechina, we let go of everything. So to be able to have a real davening, a real learning, a real mitzvah, you let go of everything. There's nothing that exists. There's nothing that exists. Why do you think the Baal Shem Tov's davening was powerful? Because nothing existed. It was just intimacy. And whenever you go into that space, you'll see there's magic. Try it, you'll see it. It's not so easy, because the hijackers will not let you do this. They will not let you do this because this is the frequency of Geula. They do not want this. They want you, there's something to worry about. Baruch Hashem. But the Baal Shem Tov taught, we let go. And when we let go, we become channels for creativity. Creativity, divine creativity. Yitzirat tiyut. And in that divine creativity, we become co-authors of creation. When we become co-authors of creation, we can deliver the new baby that's being born from all the mashbirim. Hold this baby, hold it tight, embrace it, and give it to the world. L'chaim, good Yom Tov, thank you.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Jacobson, for sharing your wholeness and your brokenness. Help us embrace our wholeness and our brokenness.
Take some question. What was your question?
Yeah, we have a question from a mother. When kids want you to sanction immoral acts, according to the Torah in your home, what do you say?
When kids want you to sanction immoral acts, the Torah says they're immoral, but they're in your home, what are you supposed to say? It's a very, very loaded question, and to answer one answer or another answer would be very unfair and also inauthentic. You have to mamish know what's going on. I'll first talk about the extreme situations and then the non-extreme situations. Sometimes you have an extreme situation, which I would call, and you'll forgive me, from a spiritual perspective, stage 4 cancer. Stage 4 cancer means your kid is in active trauma. And a lot of kids are. They're active trauma. They're not behaving in a normal, sane way. They don't have self-respect. People who sleep till 5 o'clock in the afternoon and have absolutely no regard for their own dignity, for their own schedule, for their own productivity. And they're living with their amygdala, meaning their decisions are being based on instinctive coping mechanisms of what's going to make me feel good. That's basically, there's no inner vision. So that's a state of brokenness. So here, any teichecha, any rebuke that you give will usually completely not be experienced by them in any healthy way. They're not capable of hearing it. It's almost like telling somebody who has 2 broken legs, why aren't you running the marathon? Or it's like a cancer patient who's emaciated and throwing up in bed, like, why don't you come to the Shabbos table? It's like, you're missing the point. What they just need is help. They need somebody to be there with them as they're vomiting. So when you have a kid who is in that space spiritually, and we have those kids, you just have to know it. You have to tune into it. And if you're going to be busy arguing with them and taking away their tablets from them, you're completely missing the point. I go a lot to Kesher Nafshi. Kesher Nafshi is an organization for parents who have children struggling with Yiddishkeit. So a lot of parents come to Kesher Nafshi, and they're very special conventions. So one of them, a father shared something incredible, a father whom I know very well. You know, his daughter completely left Yiddishkeit, and she became addicted to drugs. But at that time it was weed. A lot of weed. And every Mitzvah Shabbos, the girls would go to a dealer who would sell them, weed for the week. And they paid for it, and this is how they got high a whole week. And he said that he decided that he's going to go with her Mitzvah Shabbos and buy it for her and be with her in the car as she begins her Malava Malka. It wasn't Malava Malka with fish. And people said, you're crazy. You're buying your daughter this destructive substance. You're the only crazy father who does that. He says, yeah, I want to be there with her when she does it so she knows she has a father. I met this daughter recently. It's been 7 years later. She changed her whole life around. She regained her sanity and her dignity, and she just got married now. And she said something incredible. She told her father, I was the only one whose father took me. The other girls, their father refused. But you think they didn't get the drugs because they didn't have the money? They did. But you know how they got the money? They sold their bodies. They used their bodies for promiscuity. They got money. I was the only one who didn't have to violate my body because you paid for it. Now that just teaches you the state of mind that people are in. People don't understand that. So is this a mitzvah that a father should now go buy drugs for his daughter? Chas v'shalom. But in that case, it was a great mitzvah. The father was very, very smart. You have to know where your daughter is in life. You have to know where your son in life is. And if you're in denial and you're just busy protecting the name of the family, you're missing the point. On the other hand, thank God not every child is in that place. So the general key is as follows. You have to know what level of attachment exists between you and your child. If there's healthy attachment, so that the no will be absorbed from a place of love and attachment, go ahead. But if there's no attachment and the no will just be seen as another rejection, it's a nail in the coffin of healing. I hope that's clear. The details have to be elaborated, but that's the general framework. If there's no attachment, be very careful, because there's nothing more important for healing than attachment. Most of our wounds are abandonment wounds. Anybody who goes down to the core of their subconscious and their deepest pain, it's an abandonment wound. What psychology has discovered now, Chassidus understood it very well 300 years ago. The key issue in life is attachment. If you felt and you feel healthy attachment with your caregivers, which is really only a metaphor for Hashem, you have a self. If not, the self is deeply wounded and it will look for it everywhere. Our children who don't have that attachment desperately need it. The ones who can give it more than anybody in the world, more than any therapist, any Rebbe, any Rosh Hashiva, any teacher, are parents. And therefore, boundaries are critical. They're vital. Healthy boundaries is the lifeline of a civilization and a community and a person and a family. But if it's going to be at the expense of attachment, it won't be boundaries. It's just going to be another form of emotional alienation, which is very, very dangerous. I'll tell you advice. I once asked Rabbi Shimon Russell. It was a girl who was addicted to pornography on her tablet. And I knew the family very well. And the question was, should the parents, her tablet broke, should they buy her another tablet or not? And they knew what she's doing with it. She was not watching Netflix. She was not watching Rabbi Y.Y. Jacobson's Shirat either. She was watching porn. Good question. So you would think, how can a normal parent buy that tablet? And he said something counterintuitive, and I completely agree with him. And of course, he made the qualifications that this has to be done only in a very urgent situation. But he said as follows. Addiction to porn is one of the worst addictions in the world. But there's one thing that's worse than that. And that is no attachment with your parents. Because if you're attached with your parents, you can ultimately heal from addiction. If you have no attachment, the addiction is a sentence for life. So the only thing that's worse than addiction to porn is no attachment with your parents. If the only way they can now create some form of attachment is by being there for her in her crazy needs right now, that is more important than anything. And that's a very, very important perspective. So I think it's just very important to remember that. Of course, if we're not in that state, we shouldn't go there. This is not about spoiling people, and it's not about enabling crazy or immoral behavior. It's about tuning in to what I need to show up as in order to be able to help my child find their neshama and their own morality and relationship with God. And that's a very, very deep question. And the answer is never the same in any family or in any child. So that's a very general outline to this important question that you asked about moral boundaries.
It seems that even in the frum world, there are a lot of people suffering from depression and anxiety. Are they disconnected from Hashem? Chemical imbalance? The unpredictable world that causes it? What is the cause and solution for the anxiety and depression of this generation that seems to have everything?
Wow. I guess everybody heard the question. There's so much depression and anxiety even in the very religious community. Does it mean they're disconnected from God? Is it a chemical imbalance? What caused it? What should we do about it? She'ela g'dola sha'alta b'ni. This is a very, very big question, and I think one has to really be very humble before answering it, and I am. So, to give a real conclusive, authoritative answer, it's above my pay grade. I can't. But I want to just touch on a few truths that I think may resonate and may be helpful. And that is to say that when somebody is suffering from anxiety and depression, they're disconnected from God is very unfair to say. Because in most cases, people don't choose to suffer from anxiety and depression. So to say, oh, now you're disconnected from God, all it does is it increases their anxiety and depression. It's like not only are they suffering from anxiety, now they're suffering from anxiety over the fact that they have anxiety. And that's the worst form of anxiety, because that anxiety you never get rid of, because you always have anxiety. So the anxiety over anxiety is like a death sentence, and it's incessant. And to say now they're not connected from God is just a recipe for disaster, and it's not true. It's simply not true. And somebody who says that doesn't know one of two things, usually both. They don't know about anxiety, they don't know about God. Usually they don't know about both, and that's why they can say it. When somebody understands anything about God and anything about anxiety, no. Having anxiety does not mean you're disconnected from God. Sometimes it's exact opposite. Sometimes it means that you're actually very connected and you're a sensitive soul and you're experiencing a dissonance in the world and in yourself, and that's causing anxiety. Anxiety is an alarm clock. Alarm clocks are not evil, and they don't prove that you're disconnected from God. Alarm clocks just mean that they're alerting you to the fact that there's something going on. Anxiety is telling me that there's something off. There's an imbalance, there's a dissonance. Can there be a chemical imbalance? Of course, that's a major part of it. There can be so many other things as well. Something that the medical community needs to catch up to is the impact of trauma and anxiety and depression, and the impact of trauma on mental illness. Mental illness in many circles is still treated more textbook fashion with medication, and it's very, very important because it could save lives. But we also know that there may be other layers to it. And other layers are very, very deep states of consciousness that go offline because of different factors and experiences, developmental or others. And that's why it's very, very important to always have humility. I always say about doctors and therapists and rabbis, the most dangerous rabbis are the rabbis who tell you, I know everything there is to know about God and Judaism. The most dangerous therapists are therapists who tell you everything there is to know about the brain and human behavior, I know. And the most dangerous doctors are the doctors who will tell you everything there is to know about medicine and biology, I know. Run away. The key in all of these studies is humility. You're talking about infinity. You're literally talking about infinity. A cell, you know what's in a cell? Anybody knows what's in a neuron? Anybody knows what's in this brain? What's in the human consciousness? So the humility is so, so important. So I think our generation, one experience that I see why we're suffering so much from depression and anxiety, this may sound a little too messianic, but I still think it's true, is because our generation was given the task to be able to bring redemption to the world. And the only way you can bring redemption to the world is if you're ready to spit up all the toxicity. It can't be repressed anymore. So our generation, things are not repressed. Everything is coming out. Marriages that functioned very well 50 years ago are not functioning now. Because women and men both say, I want an authentic relationship. I want to experience intimacy, intimacy. When Mashiach comes, our marriage with God is not going to be based on fear and dread. It's like a woman tells me, I have a very functional marriage, and the reason I'm staying married is because I am freaking afraid of him. Or a husband says, the reason I'm a good husband is because I am frightened for my wife. And there are husbands and wives like that. They're scared from each other more than we're ready to admit. They're just scared of each other. Now, it may be a functional marriage, but it's very empty, it's very pathetic, it's very sad. So when our relationship with God is, I'm just freaking scared of God, I don't want to get Gehenna, and that's what I'm going to put on tefillin every day. It's a very, very impoverished relationship. People want a real relationship, want a deep relationship. In order to have a deep relationship, it has to be emotional. In order to have an emotional relationship, you have to deal with your emotions. When you deal with your emotions, all the messy stuff are going to come up. So all the messy stuff are coming up today. Whenever we want a deep and authentic relationship, we have to be able to work through the rubble, work through the debris. And I think that's a major issue that's happening. And the youth wants a very deep, authentic relationship with Yiddishkeit and with their parents. Children are challenging parents in ways nobody ever did this. Did you ever come to your mother and say, Ma, you are a horrible mother, you knew nothing of what you're doing. You completely did not know how to tune into emotions. You're a complete trauma victim. Nobody would even think of talking to their mother than that, even though you know how much trauma your mother has. And probably even more than you know. Today, it's very natural. A 30-year-old girl turns to her mother and says, Ma, you're a real trauma victim and you need help. And you completely, could not deal with anybody's emotions. The worst thing for a mother or father to do at that moment is, you chutzpah yak. We did everything for you. You are so ungrateful. And what does the mother do? She just cuts off the relationship and tells their daughter there's nobody to talk to. Defense mechanisms and defensiveness always comes from an animal soul consciousness that doesn't have the security and inner unbreakable wholeness, and therefore must be defensive. The divine soul is never defensive. What if I could listen to my daughter and say, wow, thank you for sharing that. It doesn't mean she's right, it doesn't mean she's wrong. It just means we open the channels to a real relationship. So I think a lot of the anxiety that we're seeing is basically children and young people crying out about inner pain so that it can be dealt with. Now you could say they're entitled and they're just playing their parents and they're manipulating you and they're exploiting you and they're not really depressed and they just want to get out of school. Okay, fine. People who just accuse their children of manipulating the system, so why are they miserable if they're manipulating? Why are they miserable? I don't think people choose to be miserable. I just don't think so. I don't think your 16-year-old daughter decided one day to destroy her family and become the most miserable human being in the entire Israel. I just don't think so. A woman wrote to me a question that her 17-year-old daughter, she wrote to me she was a tzaddikus, and now started to dress in the house like Chava before she ate from the tree. She wants to know if she should throw her daughter out of the house. She asks me. So I wrote back to her, I don't think you should throw your daughter out of your house. It seems to me that your daughter is suffering very, very badly, and I think she probably needs a mother and a father to really be there for her in a very, very deep way. So the mother writes back to me and says, why do you say that? Why do you say that? No, maybe she's just a marshas and a machshefa. Maybe she's just a marshas and a machshefa. And she is choosing to do these evil things. And why are you saying we should be there for her? Be there for what? For marshas? For a witch? Some mother talking. And between you and me, of course I understand this daughter. Oh my God. Some mother. Okay? I couldn't write that. I'm I wonder who the machshefa in this relationship is, but fine. I'm a gentleman, I'm quiet, I'm a nice guy. So I just wrote back to her. I said, yeah, maybe she's a machshefa. Maybe your daughter is a marshas. Maybe you're right. Maybe. But maybe I'm also right. 50-50 that I'm also right. Maybe somebody raped her. Maybe somebody touched her inappropriately. Maybe somebody destroyed her dignity. Maybe not. Maybe she's a machshefa, but maybe she's not. And I said, here's your choice. It's 50-50. You could go with your way and decide she's a machshefa and alienate her completely and scream at her and tell her she's one of the most evil girls in history and throw her out of the house. And one day you may find out that I was right. And you'll never forgive yourself. Till your last breath, you will never forgive yourself. You will never forgive yourself. I said, you can go with my way and say 50% she's not a machshefa. And you know what? I'm going to be closer to her. I'm going to be there for her. And I'm going to be there for her not with my ego. I'm going to be there for her with my soul, which means I'm going to transcend my ego. And maybe one day you'll find out that I was wrong. I was wrong. And the worst thing that will happen is you were very close to your daughter. That's going to be the worst thing. But you probably won't regret that till your last breath. So make a choice. I said, my personal opinion is You wrote to me that your daughter was a tzaddikas till she was 17. Do you think at 17 a dibuk of Adolf Eichmann or of Joseph Mengele suddenly went into your daughter's psyche, hijacked her cells, transplanted them with Hitler's neshama, Hitler's consciousness, and she said, I'm going to be an SS woman, destroying my entire family, la'olam vod, eradicating the last vestige of Yiras Shamayim in this house, because now I work for the SS. Sorry, I'm just not going to buy that story. I really don't think a dibuk went in at 17. I think at 17, finally, what she was repressing for 10 years came bursting out, and she can't deal with it anymore, and finally, she lost it. Wow. Could you actually apologize to her for not noticing what happened when she was 6 or 7 years old? Can you do that? One day you may need to do that. Do that. Don't be there with your ego. Just hold the pain. It was very hard for the mother to hear these words because she had a way of looking at the world. And by the way, the reason it was so hard for her to see her daughter, because nobody saw her. The reason she calls her daughter that name is because nobody ever saw her. So she got used to living life a certain way, which worked. And that's what she's doing to her daughter now. I get it. So I think when we could see this, at least be sensitive to this possibility. First of all, our homes remain happy places. Your home remains a happy place. Your children don't destroy your lives. Whenever anybody tells me, my children are destroying my lives, your children are not destroying your lives. You're choosing to allow your children to destroy your life because you don't have a life within. Your life is, you're waiting for your children to give you a life, and that doesn't happen. It doesn't work that way. Our children weren't here to give us lives. They weren't created to give us nachas. I don't know if this is heresy. Our children were not created to give us nachas. Nachas, give yourself from yourself. You have a soul, it's a chelik elokam imal. Give yourself nachas. Our children are diamonds that God has entrusted us with in order to polish them and help them become the diamonds they could become. Right? I said the other night, I think it was in the great synagogue, we say on Chanukah, the 8 candles, we don't have permission to use them, only to see them. Each children is a candle. We don't have permission to use them. They weren't created for us to use so that they're nachas machines. So I could go home and say, wow, I'm such a good father. Wow, such a good mother. What our children and students need is for us to see them. They need us to see them, not to use them, but to see them. To see them not for who we want them to be, for who they are. And to see them not on the outside, but on the inside. And there's no greater gift you can give your children than seeing them. And trust me, it's not easy to see. Because if I have never been seen, I don't know how to see anybody else. And I'm convinced that all great people became great and radiated their greatness because they had one person in their life who saw them. Not saw them as a tool to do something great, but saw them. And once you have somebody who sees you, you get to see yourself. And once you see yourself, you're unstoppable. Because you're divine. That's my brief answer to a very loaded question. Any others?
What is the best way to heal the fracture in Israel society and connect with those who are insecure about our belonging here in Eretz Israel?
Wow. Ooh, I thought the last question was a tough one. There's a duality here. On one hand, you don't want to, enable and tolerate sickening behavior, immoral behavior, foolish behavior, self-destructive behavior. On the other hand, calling it that to people is usually not productive. A trauma victim, just saying you're a trauma victim, won't help because they're trauma victims. What's needed is attachment. So this is a very deep paradox that it's very hard for most people to maintain. That's why you have that's why you have a split within the religious community about this, because it's a real paradox. I am grateful for the gift of the Rebbe because he lived through this fracture, and he really, I think, embodied the path. On one hand, the Rebbe, you probably know, was uncompromising about anything authentic and real, especially connected to Eretz Yisrael, whether it's concessions, whether it's conversations about breaking up the land, because he understood very well who the enemy is, and he understood very well what the world needs. On the other hand, when he would meet anybody, there was no judgment, there was no sense of judgmentalism, there was a sense of real love and power. I remember, there's a video, the founder of Shalom Achshav, Peace Now, once came to see the Rebbe. Now, this was an interesting meeting, because you have the Lubavitcher Rebbe, I don't have to tell you about his position on Peace Now, and this Israeli liberal leftist progressive who was busy with Shalom Achshav. And he decided he's going to, try to, so to speak, trigger the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And he says to the Rebbe, so you're still of the opinion that that Israel shouldn't give back any territories and make sure there's no peace and so forth? So the Rebbe looks at him. First of all, you could see he's not going into coping mechanism, defense mechanism, confrontation mechanism, aggressive mechanism. He's remaining in a state of the nefesh elokis, of divinity. You could feel it. There's no like, oh, here my enemy just came, what fist do I use for the punch? I'm talking about verbal punch. That's the first thing. This is non-verbal. This is the energy in the room that people feel right away. This has to do with how worked out you are, worked out internally. So this is not even what people talk about, because it's not even a conversation. This is before, but you could see it. He's there. He's calm, he looks him in the eyes, and he asks him a question. Is this a theoretical question, or do you actually have influence? In other words, that was the first question. And the man says, I have influence like every other Jew. So the Rebbe says, well, if you have influence, it would be worthwhile to use your influence, not to pressure Jews, to give back the land that God has given to them and wants them to have. Very calmly. So he says, and even if it's at the expense of war, because of this position of yours, they're all going to come to war against us. So he looks at him, says, I grew up in Russia. And in Russia, those who hated Jews always found another excuse why Jews are guilty. There will always be another reason why people who hate Jews will say that Jews deserve to be hated. But you really should not be occupying your energy and mental space in helping the enemy steal Eretz Yisrael from the Jewish people. Understand that those who hate you will really just hate you. And any appeasement is just causing you to become weak and defenseless and showing terrorism that they're going to win. Why would you want to do that? So he says, but there's no hope for peace? So according to you, there's no hope for peace? He says, the day that God wants there to be peace, and he will put into their hearts to make peace, there will be peace. And it's not going to be up to you, and it's not going to be up to me. And until then, why spend your energy, ligzol Eretz Yisrael me'am Yisrael? And it's interesting. He looks at the Rebbe, and you could see something melted in him. He wasn't this angry, furious person that came in. I don't know if he changed his opinion. He's the founder of Shalom Achshav, so I don't know, But it was so interesting to watch this exchange. So I think ultimately, all we can do is show up with compassion, with love, with authenticity, with presence, and know that deep down every Jew has a soul. Deep down every Jew wants Jews to live. Deep down every Jew knows what Eretz Yisrael is, but there's a lot of blockages. The worst thing we do is when we allow our blockages to get entangled with other people's blockages. That we don't do. So on one hand, one must be very unwavering and decisive and clear and not get nifa'el and not duck and not become inferior ever. On the contrary, the world respects Jews who respect Judaism. Everybody knows that. The world is embarrassed by Jews who are embarrassed with Judaism. On the other hand, in our relationship with other Jews, we need to realize that not ducking and not being inferior doesn't translate into accusation and pointing fingers, which just alienates. It's really holding space for people's pain and also holding space that deep down they have a neshama. And I want to be able to help them reveal it. And the truth is, I think there has been a lot of healing in the sense that a lot of Jews have had a very rude but profound awakening since October 7th, and that has to be built on. It has to be built on in a very, very real and profound way. When people show up with their full truth and love, it has a deeper impact than anybody imagines.
There are more questions. I want to ask one more question with a long answer, and the rest just quick answers that I don't want to hold you back too long. I love hearing a good speech, a lecture, for bringing to the utmost spiritual level of emotion. But putting on tefillin and going to minyan, etc., is just hard to go through. And so on for all the other mitzvahs and daily avodas Hashem. How do I bridge those two together?
Excellent question. The answer to your question is, when you learn Chassidus every day, this person, whoever's asking the question, you need Chassidus like oxygen, it's obvious. Because the Alter Rebbe always explains this. Torah mitzvahs are deeper than any emotion will ever bring you to. Emotions will bring me to very deep places, and it's amazing, and they need to bring me to deep places. But we spoke before about the frequency of infinity. Torah mitzvahs is Ein Sof itself. It's deeper than Gan Eden. Gan Eden is the bliss of Ein Sof. Torah mitzvahs is not the bliss of Ein Sof. It is Ein Sof. So I'll give a classic example. If I'm sitting with my wife on the couch, we're sipping a cup of Ma'ara. You have a Ma'ara, the cave, right? It's a good bottle. I had it the other night. And we're having a good time, and there's connection, and there's no defense mechanisms. And in a marriage, those are the moments of blissful relationships when a husband and wife could look at each other. Their guards are down, they're both vulnerable, and they're just in a presence, in a state of trust. That's what we spoke about before. And it's amazing. And it's really a beautiful feeling. It's what a relationship looks like. Or when you're sitting with your kids, and nobody's arguing, and you're not here to prove something, and you're just joking, you're talking about history, you're talking about your youth, you're just having a casual conversation, maybe with laughter or tears. Those are the moments of eternal connection and relationships. The same is true with a friend, with yourself, with Hashem, etc. And then at a moment, my wife Esty looks at me and says, you know, my brother or my mother is coming to the airport in an hour. Can you please go to Newark Airport to pick up my mother or my sister or my brother? And I look at her and say, no. I want to be with you. I don't want to be in Newark Airport. I don't like airports. I spend too much time in them. She says, I know, but I told my mother somebody's going to pick her up. So can you please do this? And I'm not feeling well, I'm exhausted. No, I want to be with you. I'm having such a good time with you. Do you see something is off here? Yeah, what's off? It's so romantic, no? I'm not going to the airport. Let your mother figure out her way because I want to be with you. Or what's off? Isn't this nice? But there's something off. What's off? We need, I think, women to explain. Because the men are like, yeah, sounds good. Stay on the couch. I'll pay for the Uber. I'll pay for the Uber. Right? What's off is as follows. You want to be with your spouse. You love your spouse, I'm sure. But your spouse just asked you for something. Right? So this may not be your need, but this is her need. So I don't care about your need. I care about you. So you care about me, but you don't care about my need. So I want a Farbrengen. I want emotions. I want bliss. But God says, I asked you to put on tefillin. I asked you to give tzedakah. I asked you to learn Torah. I'm not interested. I want you. So Torah and mitzvahs is not the experience of my wife. Going to Newark Airport is not the experience of my wife. There's no romance in Newark Airport. But you know what? It's what she wants. That's it. It's deeper. Right. In Chassidus it says like this. Gan Eden is Tainug Nivra. Olam Haba is Tainug Nivra. Olam Haza is Tainug Boire. It's an amazing insight. Gan Eden is the bliss of the soul, the bliss of the created person. Because you feel Ein Sof. There's nothing greater than that. There's no bliss greater than experiencing infinity. There's no bliss because it's the source of all bliss. Any bliss you have in this world is just a glimmer of the bliss of Gan Eden, which is Ziv HaShechina. The bliss in the Gan Eden and Olam Haba is the bliss of the created being. The bliss in this world of Torah and mitzvahs is Tainuk Boire. It's the bliss of the creator. So Gan Eden is the bliss of creation, Olam Haba. Olam Haza is the bliss of creator. It's what the creator needs and wants. So when a person, this is a major theme in Chassidus. So it's always a combination. So of course you want your emotion, and of course you want the relationship, but there's the experience of the relationship and there's the relationship. The mitzvah is the relationship itself. And the relationship itself is not about the experience of the relationship. It's deeper than the experience. Sometimes it's not about experience. It's about what my needs are. And every good marriage, this is what you know. It's not always about me feeling what my wife needs. And what if you don't feel what she needs? Women anyway don't understand 90% of their wives. I mean, women do. Men don't understand 90% of their wives' needs. You understand why she needs what she needs? Who cares? Guy said, why do I have to buy flowers for Shabbos? Explain to me the logic of a red rose. Schnitzel, I understand. Why flowers? I looked at him and I knew he's clueless. I just said, Chukah chakakti, gzeira gazarti, ein reshut lahara racharel, like paraduma. That's it. It's like paraduma. Paraduma was red. You buy red roses and be quiet. Chukah gazarti. Okay? So that's the idea. But the truth is, the more you're open to this truth, you'll see that when you put on tefillin, you'll experience a light. And when you're davening, you'll also experience a light. The problem with our davening is that we don't trust the words. No, there's this trauma in the words, like, oh, here we go, hallelujah, ashrei. So you need to learn maybe to do a few pieces in English, to let go of all your expectations of what davening is supposed to look like. Because if you could really tune into the words, you'll see that they can carry you in a very deep way. So ultimately, in the mitzvah itself, you'll feel the deepest oil. But it's a process. But we have to understand that when there's a need of the bayre, when there's I should call it a desire of the bayre, so it's deeper than any feeling of the relationship.
Okay, so a few quicker questions. In Tanya, most of us are labeled as being Rishayim. How do you translate the concept of the Rasha and the Tanya? I heard the Rav's name, that in the Rav's name, that it comes from the word torn or fragmented, karua. Can you expand on this?
Yeah. It's the reason that Tanya is not the sefer that it should be, which means learned by every Jew every day, because people don't get it. They don't understand Tanya. It's a very deep misconception on Tanya, and when people learn Tanya, they get a very, very negative self-image, and it ruins the entire experience of Tanya. It's interesting because in the first chapter of Tanya, the Alter Rebbe says he's afraid that people will see themselves as Rishayim, and they'll go into anxiety, and they won't be able to serve Hashem with joy. And that's what happens to most people learning Tanya, or at least a lot of people learning Tanya. So it's like such a tragic paradox. In chapter 1, he says that he's worried about that, and that's exactly what people are doing with Tanya, which means they're completely clueless about Tanya. Here's the rule in Tanya. He says in the introduction that all of Tanya is based on a dibur shel chiba, conversation of love, which means if there's one line in Tanya that you're not experiencing love, you're not learning Tanya. You're imposing your own wounds on the Tanya, which I don't judge, I'm just saying, but it has nothing to do with Tanya. Tanya, in every line, you should be feeling the Alter Rebbe's love. If not, just know this is a litmus test. You're not learning Tanya. So I'll just say one line because really this is not such a short question, but it's really a whole long shiur, but I'll just give a 30, 40-second version of this. The foundation of Tanya is that, Yud Tet Kislev, we start learning Tanya again. So those who don't learn Tanya, it's good to learn Tanya because Yud Tet Kislev, you finish the whole Tanya. You learn every day a piece. When you learn Tanya every day, it sets a tremendous tone for the day. It puts you on the right trajectory. But there's a few conditions how to learn Tanya. Okay, the first thing you have to understand is as follows. Whenever it says in Tanya Rasha, it doesn't mean wicked. Rasha means weak. Rasha means I'm operating from a place of coping mechanisms. That's what Russia means. That's what Russia means. Weak. I'm weak. I'm not in touch. I didn't step in to my own inner light. That's what Russia means. Russia is not Russia, Merusha, you're a wicked, evil, tyrant, dictator, evil human being. That's not Russia in Tanya. You have that Russia. In Tanya, Russia is, I'm operating from a place of coping mechanisms. That's what I'm doing. In fact, number one. Number two, the word Ra in Tanya doesn't mean evil. I know the English translations, that's what they do, but it's a wrong translation. They meant well, but it's a wrong translation. The word Ra doesn't mean evil. The word Ra in Tanya is like in Kohelet. In Kohelet, there's an expression, Hevel u'ru'ut ruach. What's ru'ut ruach? A fragmented spirit. In Baba Kama, we have Kosel Ra'ua, a flimsy, broken wall. Ra'ua. Ra'ua means a weak, broken wall. Ra in Tanya means you're broken, you're fragmented, you're not aligned with oneness. You feel that you're alone and you're separate. It's like the whole matzah and the broken matzah. So when you're broken, you're not part of oneness, you're not part of infinity. That's Ra. Ra is any vision of life and any instinct in life and any behavior in life that is not based on your alignment with oneness and infinity. That's called Ra. You get that? Third thing you have to know about Tanya is whenever it says Nefesh HaBahamis, it means I'm operating from a defensive space, a survival instinct, which puts me, by definition, in a shell and detaches me from experiencing my inner life force and energy. If you know these three things, you'll be able to learn Tanya in a different way. Again, Russia is not wicked. It's weak and operating from coping mechanisms. Ra is not evil. It's any reality or instinct or drive or behavior that is not aligned. It's not based on the vision that you're aligned with infinite oneness. You're broken and alone. Nefesh HaBahamis is basically whenever I am in a survival modality. When Nefesh HaBahamis rules, it means I'm in survival mode, detached from my inner life force and energy. And the whole Tanya is basically how to help a person to live with an open heart while we have coping mechanisms and we can easily fall into them, to be able to have the awareness that I can make choices and step in every morning to my inner life force and energy. The moment you get this, you will be grateful for every line in Tanya. It's a gift of infinity. But when people don't understand this, it could be a traumatizing book, because we impose all of our education trauma and all of our Yiddishkeit trauma and all of our Gullus trauma onto the Alter Rebbe, and we think he wrote a book to traumatize more people, in knowing you thought you were a tzaddik, at least a Beinani, and now I'll show you you're a Russia, Sheber, you don't even have a moment on Halavai, Beinani, and you're just a Russia, so now let's eat Ragalach. So I'm telling you, if you learn a lot of Tanya and you're not crying with joy and love, Avas Olam, Tanya was written with Avas Olam. That's a good line. Tanya was written with the love that exists in the whole world and in all of history, and it's all there in Tanya. If you're not experiencing that, I'm not judging you. But just realize it's not Tanya. I'm in my own stuff, which is fine. I got that Nefesh HaBahamis. Now you got to learn Tanya to deal with your stuff. But don't put your stuff on Tanya, because Tanya is all about dealing with stuff, not stuff. It's not part of the stuff. It's part of the redemption. You understand what I'm saying? Okay, good. This is important stuff, this stuff. So we can get through the stuff. Yo.
Besides Tanya, what is the next most important sefer to learn in Chabad and why?
You're asking the wrong guy. Torah, Likkutei Torah, it's very hard to live without those today. It's pure oxygen, mamish oxygen. Alter Rebbe is my Marim are like, I don't know, it's like it's mamish a gift of living. You live in Geula every moment. You open a Maimer and it's incredible, this stuff. I've been teaching it for many, many years, and there's a lot of people in Efrat who listen to it, and you know how life-changing it is. It's not, it's life-changing stuff, the Alter Rebbe's Maimarim. That's Torah, Likud Torah, the Tzemach Tzedek is a Sefer, Derech Mitzvah Sech is an incredible Sefer. And then the Rebbe's Sichos, Likutei Sichos, the Rebbe's Sichos are incredible. Each Sikh is like a gift of redemptive consciousness. And if you understand Yiddish, you should listen to the Rebbe saying the Sichos. That's mamish unbelievable. So once you finish Tanya Torah, Likutei Torah, the Rebbe's Maimarim, and Likutei Sichos, you'll bring me back to Efrat. I'll give you homework next year. A lot of Svarim to learn. You know what really? It's not really which sefer you learn. It's really not which sefer you learn. I had a mentor, Rabbi Yoel Kahneman. He used to tell us. He says, your whole life you have to learn only one mimer. But to understand one mimer, you have to learn 1,000 maimarim. Yeah. The Chassidus used to say. It says in Pirkei Avos, "V'aloi b'maimer echad yachal yibaros." So say with ein mimer, kemen b'shafen veren. With one mimer you can be recreated. But mimer echad, one mimer, yachal yibaros. You can recreate yourself. But you just have to tune into that mimer. You have to tune into that mimer. If you tune into the frequency of that mimer, you can be recreated. Sometimes to get one, you need 1,000. So it's really not which sefer you learn. I think it's really the state of mind you're in when you're learning that sefer. If you're in the right state of mind, you'll get there. And if you're not in the right state of mind, you can learn another 100 svarim. You're not learning the svarim. You're just busy exonerating yourself from guilt and shame because you're supposed to have a kviyas itim. So, you understand? And then we're not learning. We're just busy, running away from shame, and that's not learning. It's just the Nefesh HaBaham is trying to help itself with another survival instinct called religion. It's really is religion another survival mechanism, or is it the reality of Ein Sof? That's the question. Galus religion is a religion that's a survival mechanism. It's be religious so that God doesn't punish you. Be religious so you get Gan Eden. That's not religion. That's trauma. You're offline. So the whole Chassidus is stop being religious and stop experiencing religion as a survival mechanism, a coping mechanism. It's about the experience of reality. You understand what I'm saying? This is very important stuff. Religion could be the greatest coping mechanism. Ask a lot of religious Jews, they'll tell you. Especially when you get very hot-headed about it. Sometimes, I'll tell you another great story I just heard at a convention. He told me, he said it changed his life. I mentioned before Rabbi Russell, so he said that his kids left Yiddishkeit, he was struggling, and he had a miserable Shabbos meal because nobody was there at the table, they weren't interested. So, he did his mirrors, Ka'ech Saif, but really depressed. Karibain with more depression, Yom Menucha, whatever, it was very, very miserable. Anyway, he finishes the meal, he benches, and he goes up to his room to retire, and he's really despondent. And he said his daughter, who has just started to leave Yiddishkeit, looked at him in the hallway and said, Tati, this Judaism thing, it doesn't look like it's really working out for you, huh? And he said that moment his daughter made him a Baal Tshuva. It was like a dagger in his chest. This Judaism thing, it doesn't look like it's really working out for you. It's so interesting, you're so excited about Shabbos. You want all your kids to keep Shabbos. Why are you so miserable? Because they're not producing the Shabbos energy that you want them to produce. Because at that moment he realized, do I have a relationship with God? Or is it just another ego trip? Shabbos is just another ego trip. If you have a relationship with God, it's Shabbos. So you're sitting alone at the table. So it's Shabbos. Is God real or not real? He's fake. So if my kid didn't say Dvar Torah, so what? Now it's a third world war. It's like that house, the father says, "Nu Yankee Dvar Torah, I don't have. Shabbos, I don't have. What do you do in school all week? Nothing. Why am I paying $18,000 tuition? Good question. I always say you shouldn't. You're wasting your time in yeshiva. I agree. I told you, take me out. You understand? The poor guy's Shabbos is destroyed because this kid didn't have a Dvar Torah. That's it. It's all. Shabbos begins and ends with my kids doing a good show for me. Now, I have nothing against kids saying the Dvar Torah. Let them say Divrei Torah till 1 a.m. The point is, it's always a question, is it a coping mechanism or is it a real experience of truth, of reality? That's the question. Religion could become a very deep coping mechanism. I do everything but I didn't go out of my animal soul state of consciousness. And it's very sad. And by the way, that's what the youth, a lot of them are rejecting. They're rejecting a Judaism that is part of animal soul consciousness. So for that, I don't have to be frum. I could do other things for my animal soul consciousness that are actually a little less boring. Forgive all my my thing. It's been a long week for me. So. There's an expression of the Navi, Shikoret v'lo miyayin. Sometimes you're drunk, not on wine. Any other questions to bring out a little more heresy?
I hope you forgive me for asking a personal question. Are you shocked at the stories and problems you hear? How do you deal with it personally?
Wow. So, unfortunately, I'm not shocked anymore. I used to be shocked, now I'm not shocked. I'm not shocked because I've seen humans in their greatness, and I've seen humans in their despicability. And emails and letters I received and stories that people shared have been so shocking that unfortunately I'm not shocked. When you hear about satanic, ritualistic child abuse as a real thing happening by very religious Jews, you're just not shocked anymore. When you hear, Sure. Yeah, satanic, ritualistic child abuse. Yeah. In London there was a story. In Israel, Yeah, very, very religious Jews. You see them on Shabbos. They're dressed in the perfect, holy, holy garb, but they're capable of sexual, ritualistic, satanic abuse towards children. So you're dealing with levels of sick people. Each of them should be imprisoned for life, if not executed. And you're talking about evil on a very, very high level. Very high level. And this is part of the evil of the world that there's no way to logically put your, wrap your brain around. And then you're talking about other stuff, everything everything, I don't know what's above that, but, there's a lot of things that are very shocking, a father sexually molesting his children. Like, what do you say about that, A mother sexually molesting hers. You're talking about sick people. Literally sick people. And then the father demanding from his daughter, Kibud Av. She stopped talking to him because he molested her. He never even apologized. And now he says, what about Kibud Av? You understand what people are... And then her siblings want her to go every Friday to visit him because you need to respect. And her mother wants it too because her mother's also sick. And she writes me an email. She feels guilty. Is she being over a mitzvah's Kibud Av because she doesn't visit her father? And I'm like, it's a sin for you to visit your father. The guy belongs in prison. It's a sin for you to visit your father. He's a sick, evil man. He never even apologized to you. Because visiting her father for her triggers trauma. She goes crazy for a week. She can't come back. I told her it's an issue for you to go visit your father. But people are telling her it's a mitzvah to go visit her father. And if she doesn't go visit, she said people are sick. They're sick. They're not normal. And they blame it on religion. They blame it on God. Like this is their God. They tell me, if this is your God, thank God I got no God of yours. If this was your God, I would be an atheist years ago. In fact, I believe many Jews are atheists because this is the God they learned about. Rabbi Yitzik once told an atheist, we're pretty close. The God you don't believe in, trust me, I don't believe in either. Classic line of the Yitzik, right? That's Chassidus. Like the God, tell me which God you don't believe in. Trust me, I don't want to believe in them either. It's probably a pretty despicable God to believe in. You understand? And if you take me to a place of infinite love, then probably everybody believes in that. If they can only feel their heart beyond all their pain. So unfortunately, I'm saying unfortunately because I don't want to sound insensitive, but I'm not shocked. I'm not shocked. But I should say that together with that, I hear every day and I see every day the greatness of people. I see Avas Olam. I see Avas Olam and I see the gift of people having the courage to touch the texture of love inside of them. How do I deal with it? So that's exactly the story with the matzah. That's what happened. I was reading a story and I couldn't deal with it. And that's when it came in. Don't be afraid of broken people and broken places, because it's just the humility of knowing that none of us replace God. All we can do in life is serve as a channel, and that's what I feel I'm supposed to do. So when I see such a story, I ask myself, okay, you sent this story to me. How can I show up here? With the tools I have, with the heart I have, to hold space for this person and show them that they have a soul that's indestructible. That's the only thing I can do. And show me how I can do it. I'm not going to understand. I'm not going to control. I'm not going to think I understand. I'm not going to try to understand. I'm not even going to go into that space, because the moment you go into that space, it's a disaster. I told you, using your mind to experience life, especially the pain of life, is like using your mind to experience, cheesecake. You don't do that. You don't go there with your mind. So I try to stay away from there. I just show up with presence. If I need to cry, I'll cry. And that's it. And then you just hold space. It's really about holding space with wholeness, as I told you, with wholeness. Hold space for brokenness with wholeness. Don't hold space for brokenness with brokenness. You know why? Because then you reinforce the person's brokenness. When somebody is suffering, don't start pitting them and becoming broken with them. We think that if I become broken, because you're broken, I'm going to help you. I just help you remain in the frequency of brokenness. I want to hold your brokenness with empathy and love, but with my wholeness. Because then you will have your wholeness. There's frequencies that we tune into, and it's not words, it's presence. It's presence. I'll tell you a gewaldige Meise. It taught me so much about talking to people. There was a Yid, I knew him, he passed away young. He was very, very ill from a very young age. And he was dugri, blunt. And he once went for dollars to the Rebbe, to the Lubavitcher Rebbe. I saw a video of it. And he was online, and as he's approaching the Rebbe, he's going like this. Like you would do, like they used to do to a 3-year-old. You remember when they did this in school? When I was a kid, they would always go like this, and you knew, trouble is coming. So he starts doing this to the Rebbe on the line to dollars. Now you have to understand, the Rebbe was, double, triple his age, and he was also a Chabad Chassid, so it's like very strange. Anybody to do this to the Lubavitcher Rebbe, or even to an older person. I mean, you don't start doing this, to a Baba, like to a Zayda, but he's going like this to the Rebbe, and I'm like wondering. And then he comes to the Rebbe, and he's still like this, and he says, I am so disappointed in you. In Hebrew, it says, Ani kol kach muchzav memcha. That's what he said. A Lubavitcher Chassid. Now, I don't know why he was so disappointed. He didn't say why. My hunch would be he suffered from an illness, and maybe he was hoping the Rebbe would take him out of it. The Rebbe didn't. I don't know. I'm just speculating because I don't know if that's the case. But he just said those words. I am so disappointed with you. And, I asked myself, how is the Rebbe going to respond? Like, I wondered so much, how is he going to respond? Like, if somebody would come over to me and say, that was a horrible speech you gave. I am so disappointed with you. And that other speech you gave was even worse. And everything, you're a disappointment. Like, and I need kol kach mochzav, I had my hopes high in you, and I'm like, so I know that, on the surface, you behave, but internally, right, it doesn't feel as good as a compliment, right? So you got to deal with it. So I was just and I looked at the Rebbe's face, and I saw he didn't, he remained fully present. And he repeated the words. He said, so you are very disappointed in me. Ah? He said, that makes 2 of us. I'm also very disappointed in myself. Bracha v'atzlacha, and I was like, wow, I didn't expect that. First of all, he repeated his words. Which was interesting. The Rebbe didn't do that. He heard and he said what he said. He repeated his words. Almost like, I heard your words and I'm going to say them over again. And then he said, you're not the only one. He said, it makes 2 of us. Because there was already somebody who was disappointed in me before you. It's called me. Then I realized, first of all, there was no defensiveness. Second of all, he completely held space for his words and he repeated them. But then he did something else. He's like, I am still your Rebbe. I'm still attached to you. You're disappointed in me, so you feel like we're detached. I'm there with you in your disappointment from me, because I'm also disappointed. No, I'm explaining. He said, yeah, I'm also disappointed in myself. No, I'm explaining now. Yeah? I once heard from a Yoel Khan. He said a Jew came out of Yechidus from the Rebbe. And he went from the Rebbe's room into the small base medrash, and he's very, very upset. So Rabbi says, what happened? So he says, the Rebbe is broigezach. The Rebbe is angry at me. The Rebbe is angry, he's upset at me. And he's like completely overwhelmed. Rabbi told this to me. And he said such a wise thing to him. Such a powerful thing. He said, okay, don't worry. It's fine. The Rebbe is upset at you. You probably deserve to be upset at. He's upset at you. He said, I'll tell you what I'm worried about. I'm worried about that you're going to get upset with the Rebbe. The Rebbe being upset with you, he's not going to detach from you. He's not going to say goodbye to you. He's upset. Something is hurting. But if you get upset at the Rebbe, you're going to detach from your source. That's what I'm worried about. So he said, you're upset at me. Okay, I'm there with you. You're upset at me. You know, in a relationship, you know how powerful that is? You know how powerful that is? I'm disappointed in you. You're disappointed in me. Say it back. Say back what the other person said about their disappointment. And then feel it. Wow. Maybe I'm also disappointed. You know, the hiskashras, the connection. So whenever we respond, you know, we never want to respond from a place of defense mechanisms, coping mechanisms, and ego mechanisms, and survival mechanisms. Because those responses always separate us. You always want to respond from a place of wholeness. And then you can be there with people. So that's how I try to, I aspire to respond from that place, at least when I'm in a better place.
I believe that Chabad as a whole needs to be the last man standing in Chutz La'aretz, just like any captain needs to be the last man standing on his ship. Do you feel it is the time that Chabad leaders need to start letting the world know it's time to come home, and that they only have one home?
It's a very deep and sensitive question, but this question is really above my pay grade. In other words, it's a historically sound question, but it's a question that one needs the responsibilities of a tzaddik hadar to be able to take it on their shoulders. And the reason is Chabad, with all of its influence in America, and it has influence in America. If every Chabad chassid and shliach in the United States makes aliyat to Eretz Yisrael, I'm not sure that every one of the 5.5 million Jews in America are going to follow. So I just think we have to realize that. In other words, Chabad has influence, and they can influence maybe a lot of people. But as the Rebbe used to say, you know, when you pick up a building, it's called, you have to go to the lowest place and then lift up the building. Why did the Rebbe never come to Eretz Yisrael? I'm not sure. But it was obvious that as long as Mashiach didn't come, he felt that he cannot afford the spiritual bliss of living in Eretz Yisrael, because it's still galus, and the brokenness in the world wasn't healed yet, and some people are just in tune with that constantly because they need to bring galus to a state of geula. So I think every person has to ask themselves that question personally, but I think it's just important to understand that we're still in a state where there's millions and millions of Jews who are not going to come to Eretz Yisrael. I'm with you. I'm with you. I'm with you. Okay. The real question of this is what Hashem wants, nothing else.
That's clear.
It's a very deep question. Huh?
Thinking it's lower, it's very simple.
Okay. You have to understand the Talmidim of the Rebbe, they have to trust the Rebbe. So it's not so simple for everybody. If somebody has a shlichus just to say that my nefesh wants to be in Eretz Yisrael, you have to know what Hashem wants for this person's soul. Somebody is running a school, and there's 200 children, who each of them would become intermarried to a guy if this shliach moved to Eretz Yisrael. Are you ready to say that this shliach should move to Eretz Yisrael? How could you? At Mevina ma shani omer. I'm asking you a shaila. So what he's talking to Chabad, and Rabbi Waiwai himself too. You're talking, it's very geschmack what you're saying. But I'm telling you, there are shluchim that because of them, these Jews are not intermarrying. They're remaining Yidden. And these are children, you're making like this, but for the Rebbe, these were his children. You understand? If you had a child living in India and living in California, living in San Francisco, right? And living in Vermont, and this is their only link to the Rebbeinu Shalom. So it's not so pashut.
I understand.
You just have to be sensitive.
When
That's it.
I went to Chabad camp, and there was a family Chabad, there was Tzivos Hashem. And when I now visit my son in hospital, and all the stories of Cloud, that Tzivos Hashem.
What's the
I
kshaila?
just think Tzivos Hashem is here now.
There's no kshaila.
Here's the time and the
There's no shaila.
Rabbi, I think there was some.
I don't think there's an argument here. Huh?
I think part of the question was that I believe that all of the Chabad Shluchim, they should say they should be the last men on the ship, but shouldn't they be telling the people that they're bringing into Yiddishkeit that they have one home? I realize that they should be the last one.
Yeah, I mean, many Jews in their communities made Aliyah, but I mean, it's such, everybody's in such a different place, and you're dealing about people's choices and journey, like they don't have that control. I mean, I think it's a little bit, fictional to think they have that control over millions and millions of Jews. They just don't. And let's face something else. Like, I'm going to say something sensitive now, because I just like to be as authentic as I can. Let's say all the Jews would move to Eretz Yisrael. Yeah? The leadership of Israel has made some of the most disastrous, catastrophic choices here. You have to understand, the tsaras of Eretz Yisrael have to do with the fact that since the 6-Day War, and even before, there's a leadership in Israel that completely misunderstood its role in Israel. And that big tzara, that has to do with the spiritual state of the Jewish people. So we have to understand, that's the real issue. The enemy within is the enemy of Galus. And that enemy is healed through tshuva and masim tovim. It's healed through Chassidus. It's healed through godliness. It's just important to understand that. Nothing will replace Geula. The geography of the Jewish people is a critical thing. But we have to understand that the Nekuda of Galus is not everybody living in one place or another place. You can have every Jew living in Eretz Yisrael, and we could still be in the most horrific chayshach kafel and machupel of Galus. זה קצת אמת מה שאני אומר, לא? אולי אפילו הרבה אמת. זה לא אמת.
We're imagining if there were so many of you here, it would change everything.
Why?
I know a lot of Lubavitchers.
Arik Sharon would not have given back Gaza. Yitzhak Rabin would have not made Oslo. The Rebbe begged them, and they didn't listen to the Rebbe. They didn't listen. None of them listened to the Rebbe. They were all close to him. Begin loved the Rebbe. Sharon loved the Rebbe. Netanyahu loved the Rebbe. Rabin respected the Rebbe. Peres, they all came to the Rebbe. The Rebbe they didn't listen to. The Rebbe they did not listen to. And because of that, they have 60 years of hell in this place. Huh? Of course, everything is Hashem leading the world. But the way it came on a derech hateva, everything is Hashem leading the world. The way it came on a derech hateva was catastrophic. Now, why Hashem allows it, I don't know. Everything Hashem allows, of course. I'm saying the Rebbe warned and warned and warned. I mean, I grew up there. Every Farbrengen, he said, I see a p'chiyah l'doros. I see a p'chiyah l'doros. I see, it was then 3 million Jews. 3 million Jews in danger because of what they're doing. You just have to understand the levels of Galus have nothing to do with where they're living. The levels of Galus have to do with the fact that we're living in Galus. And it's tshuva that transfers that. It's the spiritual revolution that transfers that. And the Rambam says every mitzvah could tip the whole world. So who understands the power of a mitzvah that's done anywhere in the world? Now somebody may say, I don't see it that way. I see everything about living in Israel. But you have to appreciate that the great spiritual masters saw godliness and Yiddishkeit, Torah and mitzvahs as the core of the Jewish Renaissance. And Eretz Yisrael is a manifestation of that, not a substitute for that. It's just important to be sensitive to that state of consciousness. I'm not telling anybody should agree with that, but you have to understand that. People pressured the Rebbe all the years to come to Eretz Yisrael, but he understood that the key of Jewish existence is the Chabad nidachenu me'arba kanfis ha'aretz begins spiritually. Because I could live in Eretz Yisrael and spit at the Shekhinah in Eretz Yisrael every day. Unfortunately. Ma? There's a lot of work to do. And that same person who lived in Chutz La'aretz, I don't think there was a person ever who lived in Eretz Yisrael more. You know, Libi b'mayrev, yeah.
You don't think that the tshuva itself that you're talking about, the tshuva itself may be actually tshuva ala aretz to come to Eretz Yisrael to be tachon and emunah? That would take, not only that it would actually change the spiritual fabric of Medinat Yisrael, of Eretz Yisrael, inherently by all the Jewish people.
Maybe.
You forget the fact that they can vote now, and they can actually change on a practical level.
Maybe, but I'm just saying, I think people have to understand. Somebody makes that decision, it's amazing. I just know it would be above my pay grade to say that this is exactly what Hashem wants from everyone who has a positive influence in Chutz La'aretz to leave. Maybe it's the truth, but I apologize that I'm not in the capacity of having the shoulders to be able to say that. Maybe it's true. I am humbled by different perspectives. I stand humble. I'm just explaining that a person, I think, needs to understand that if your mom is saving a Jew from complete being lost to the Jewish people, you just have to appreciate that there's a lot of meaning in that. And maybe that's going to bring the ultimate geula. So I just think we have to be sensitive to that truth. זה מה שאני אומר, אני לא, חס ושלום, רוצה לא להיות רגיש למסירות נפש שקורה פה בארצנו, כפי שדיברנו לעיל. I'm sorry, can you say a little louder?
Sorry if I missed this. Can you give a Hebrew word for the word presence that you were using?
A deeper word? Oh, a Hebrew word for presence, yeah, dveikut. Dveikut. Huh? I didn't use the word nochachut because nochachut sounds like just, physical presence. Dveikut is a mental state. At mevina, dveikut is a mental state. Openness and vulnerability by being in connection with the rhythm of life. Openness and vulnerability by being in full alignment with the rhythm of life. Yeah, that is the experience of Dveikus. The challenge is that there's thoughts that hijack it. And they right away turn us into but you have to do this, and you have to do this, but this happened, and that happened. So that's the avodah of making space for the Nefesh HaBahamas while going into Dveikus with the Nefesh HaLekis. Okay, maybe we'll take one more question if there is. Yes?
What do you feel about the weaker parade guys in yeshiva?
The weaker what?
Parade guys in yeshiva going to the army?
Oh. You want me to solve all the problems, Mamash, I see. Everybody making aliyah, everybody going to the army. I don't. It's not Bezat Hashem. You have to know who you are and what your shlichus is. It's not, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, I could tell you a story. Since I'm a Talmud of the Rebbe, so I'll tell you a story about the Rebbe. There was a Jew in Kfar Chabad, a Chassidus Yid, and his son was out of yeshiva. He wasn't learning. And this is many, many years ago. And the rabbi of Kfar Chabad then was one of the Rabbi Ashkenazi, Rabbi Mordechai Ashkenazi, and he was going to the Rebbe. So this father asked him to ask for a bracha for his son. He's out of yeshiva, and they want to take him to the army. So he asked a bracha. He didn't want to go to the army. So he told this to the Rebbe. So the Rebbe looked at the Rabbi of Kfar Chabad, Rabbi Ashkenazi. His son told us to hear this from his father. And he says, the Rebbe says, I learned through Eirachayim, Yeredeya, Even Ezer, Choshe Mishpat. I did not find a heter that a bachur who's not in yeshiva should not be in the army. That's what I heard from Rabbi Ashkenazi's son. Because lo samad al dam re'achim. Now, on the other hand, people say that Chabad, they know how to be with secular Jews. But other people, if you put them in, you're going to lose a whole generation. And that's a big taina, because the army, at the present moment, hasn't been equipped for having that whole, demographic of boys who are even outside of yeshiva. So that's another issue. A third issue that has to be addressed is, and this is the deepest issue, this doesn't have to do with religious Jews. This is what I said back earlier, and that is, it's easy always to attach it to this problem, that problem. The foundation on which the army ethos has been built for many generations, unfortunately, has been based on a very, very profound sense of internal weakness. Not the soldiers, chas v'shalom, the leadership of the Tzava Haganah Yisrael. Arik Sharon asked the Rebbe in 1969 to build the yeshiva in Hebron. He said, I would love to, but I'm not allowed to. Why not? He wrote to Sharon, because based on the state of the Israeli government, if there's going to be a fight in Hebron between a Jewish boy and an Arab boy, you will take the side of the Arab boy. This is what he wrote to Sharon in 1969. So you're talking about an army that needs a lot of healing on the top, a lot of healing. So that's a real issue whether you have Haredim there or not. So these are just some of the factors that have to be dealt with. But this is a story I heard from Ashkenazi. So he wanted boys that are learning to learn, but this is what he said, that he doesn't have a heter for boys who are outside of yeshiva. Yeah?
I was just going to say, I was walking in the hills of Bat Ayin on Shabbos and with friends, and we happened upon a very holy rabbi, Rosh Yeshiva, Rabbi Otniel of Hebron, and he was hosting a Shabbos in the woods with 20 Bachur and 20 army young men that are about to go into the army, and the Bachrim were teaching along with the rabbi and his rebbitzin, and the children were there, and it was amazing, how to keep Shabbos properly in the woods or in the army, wherever you are. And so it was such a beautiful thing to see, like even in this,
Amazing.
how to keep Shabbos while you're soldier
Yeah.
properly. It was very, there's a lot
Yeah.
of halacha to know.
Somebody was raising a hand there? Oh, you were.
I just wanted to say, I very, very much appreciate that you didn't say what I'm going to say, and I'm not saying that I can say it exactly right, but in defense of Chabad, and I'm not Mrs. Chabad, that Chabad has done incredible things in Eretz Yisrael and has a role here, and it's not like Eretz Yisrael isn't on the map by you, by Chabad. And what Chabad has done for Eretz Yisrael, it's like, you can't even measure how much it is, because it's huge.
Yeah.
Baltimore, New York, all over, we see a lot about Orthodox from leaders in communities writing letters in support of child molesters. Lack of understanding, lack of doing due diligence before they write these letters. What's your feeling?
Listen, there was many decades that there was a cluelessness that existed in the community because people really didn't know, principals, rabbis, etc. Today, I don't think there's any justification for it because there has been an education. Victims have emerged and told their stories. So I'm surprised actually to hear this. I didn't know this still happens. But if it happens, it has to be condemned in the most unquestionable and decisive terms because it's literally support of bloodshed. Molestation is a form of emotional murder. Murder is murder, and this is emotional murder which stays with them. There is healing, but it's still emotional murder. So any form of support is it's a demonstration of either of cruelty or cluelessness that is mind-boggling, mind-staggering. I don't think it could be tolerated in any possible way by any just society. Nothing to do with religion. I mean, it's any just society that calls for the, allowing emotional murder of children to be ignored is beyond horrific.
That's part of the problem. It is accepted in society outside of religion. It's so rampant.
That's why it must be spoken about.
The problem is exactly.
It has to be spoken about.
The
I mean, what happened here when B'nai Brak, that story was really a watershed moment. But probably it also helped people, because when that person in B'nai Brak who has been molesting kids for 25 years, and he was the main therapist, so he was sending all the problems to him, and then he molested them and molested women for 25 years. And it was undercover, people knew about it. And then he killed himself, which was the one mitzvah that he did do in his life. And he wrote this note that he's going to take them to court in heaven, Rabbi Shmuel Eliyahu from Tzfas. And then there was a newspaper in B'nai Brak that wrote on him Zatzal, Zecher Tzadik Livrocha. Now on that newspaper I wasn't surprised, because that newspaper, over the years, whatever, it's what it is. But when they wrote Zatzal on him, I was like, wow. And then there was a girl who committed suicide because she was molested by him. And they said that she's saying Lashon Hara. They accused them of doing Lashon Hara on the person who did this, because Lashon Hara. So suddenly, the perpetrator became the victim, and all the victims became the perpetrators, right? So it was a horrific moment, because it's the tragedy of a religious community that is completely in the dark, and not just in the dark, where victims are perpetrators. Now, how did the victims feel? It was that moment when I saw what was happening, living in America, I realized that we are now in danger of losing hundreds of thousands of kids, because anyone with an open heart is going to see this. And I don't know if you know, that's when I came up with a video, an hour, 2 videos, of giving the real, what I felt was the real approach. I don't think I ever had a video watched as many times, and I don't think I ever had comments as many. And it was very, very moving, because there were people who wrote to me, it saved them from suicide. Girls who were molested by him, by this guy in B'nai Brak. And they didn't know that anybody was supporting them. It was all Lashon Hara, Lashon Hara, Lashon Hara, Lashon Hara. And I feel it as, I told somebody that it may be the biggest chus of my life, because I felt that it gave hundreds of thousands of young men and women a realization that Judaism is not corrupt at its core. What they were seeing was a corruption of Judaism at its core, because they know how much they suffered. If this is the God they need to support, it's basically like telling us that the Nazis are the tzaddikim, like the cuckoo. So, I think, listen, I believe, reality, I don't believe. I think truth is that reality prevails. Because reality comes from the word real. Emet me'eretz titzmach. Hashem Elokim emes. Reality prevails because it's real. And the more you stay connected to reality, and you teach reality, and the main thing is you live reality, and you breathe reality, and you radiate reality, it sticks. It takes root. It grows. All sheker ein le raglayim. Sheker, by definition, never existed, never will exist. So even when it does exist, it's temporary. It's superficial. It's based on cover-ups. So all you can do is, live truth, be truth, radiate truth, and give truth. And truth sticks wherever it has to stick, because it's reality.
Thank you so much for the Jacobson.
Tremendous hatzlacha.
Thank you again to all our sponsors.